Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Tonight, covering all things pro wrestling. As always, live from No Cell Studios, I'm the Ace of Tavern, Acefield Retro. And joined on this Monday evening with the one bad Chad himself. What's going on, man?
Not a whole lot, man. What a weekend. Full Gear happened. We're going to get into that, give our opinions. Are we upset the devil didn't appear? Let's talk about it. We'll get to that. Yeah, and you're previewing Survivor Series. So these shows are always fun, packed. We struggle to get in quick hitters because me and Ace are going to rattle on for an hour about Full Gear and probably close to that on Survivor Series. So you guys know the deal by now. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out on the turnbuckletavern.com. All the great shows we have. I can't wait to get into all this stuff.
Yep, episode 47 of the year. We are approaching year end of 2023. And man, what an event here. This is not the last pay-per-view of 2023, but it is going to be damn hard to top in December in Nassau Coliseum on Long Island, New York, because this was, end to end. We'll get into the big stories as you mentioned, but end to end as a fan, how could you not be happy from what we saw from All Elite Wrestling on Saturday night?
Yeah, at this point, I truly don't understand people that can be critical of these pay-per-views. I just think they hit them out of the park. Every once in a blue moon, there might be one choice they make or one thing they do not do that might be like, I wish they would have done that. But there's never been a show where one choice that you don't agree with ruins the whole show. Even with the debacle that everyone went crazy on with the exploding barbed wire death match and the fizzle at the end of that match, a lot of people try to use that as a way to discredit that event. Go back and watch that event. That event was fire. And I feel like that's the case with AEW. They always deliver. I never spend, and dude, I'm sure a lot of you guys out there listening are feeling the clamp down on grocery prices being high, gas being high. You're having to shell out $50 for this pay-per-view. And I never feel like I didn't get my money's worth. There's never been one event where, as tight as times are, I feel like, man, that wasn't worth the 50 I spent. I always feel like I got my money's worth.
Absolutely. Bang for the buck. I feel like they jammed so much into it. And it's an eclectic mix of things. This card itself was a great microcosm of what AEW provides. It's a buffet for wrestling fans. There's something for everybody. And if you are watching this show and you couldn't find something you liked at this point, you're nitpicking, or you just can't be pleased and you're not a wrestling fan. Because I'm not saying you have to like everything they did in this card. I'm not saying you have to think they're the perfect company, but for every wrestling fan, if you're watching on this, there's something for everybody. It was amazing to watch just really how dynamic and how diverse this can be, and how, flexible their storytelling can be. We saw some of the most death-defying, hardcore antics we've ever seen in a wrestling ring, bar none, not just this year, and technically sound wrestling, high flying. We saw a goddamn ladder match that will stand out for the test of time for tag team championship belts that could really resonate in any year you put it in. So, man, this card alone was a great sort of exercise in understanding, well, AEW is operating on a different level as far as in-ring product.
Yeah, and you said, if you're not happy by these events, you're nitpicking or whatever. I have to put my stethoscope on, and I feel like a lot of those people that have those complaints, if I'm giving my diagnosis with my stethoscope, I'm saying we have a problem called fed brain. So
we like our PLEs to be short, uninspiring, and maybe go just a bit over 2 hours and 40 minutes, where you get exactly what you want with whatever Peacock costs for you. Maybe you use the commercials, $4.99 a month. That's the bang for your buck again there. I'm not saying the PLEs are bad, but in comparison, as far as
it's not even close, dude.
With fans, and friends, you get in a room together. Like, this is an experience to watch and experience with friends. This reminds me of the days where you watch during the Attitude Era, where it's an event. You order a pizza, you drink some beers, and you can't take your eyes off the screen.
Let's be honest. A lot of times, not always, sometimes they'll pull one out and you'll be shocked. But a lot of times, if it's not Mania, Rumble, or SummerSlam, they feel like an elevated episode of Raw. And of course, the Fed Brain people out there will always lean on but I don't have to pay $50 for it. So I don't have that expectation that a $50 pay-per-view price brings. I don't buy that. I think that's a cop out. I really do. Like, I feel cheated and I'm only paying $10 a month. That's bad. Like, so
Well, that being said, let's get into big story number one and talk all things AEW Full Gear.
Stories. Story 1.
AEW Full Gear in the books from the Kia Forum in Los Angeles, California. And as we said, what a night it was. We're going to go through the match card, talk about all the events here, because as far as canon storytelling goes in AEW, they've advanced a lot of stories. They've moved things in certain directions. We got some closure on some programs, but it feels like this is setting the stage for an eventful 2024. And I think down the line, we're going to have more, maybe, Dynamite Collision will give us those stories, but we're now building towards World's End, which is their finale of the year. But my God, like this story, as far as top to bottom, I mean, starting with this AEW World Championship picture, this is very, very layered, Chad. Like there's so many parts to this that isn't just like, oh, cool, MJF has another title defense under his belt. There's so much that went into the storytelling just from the beginning to the end of the night.
this is like not getting the credit it deserves for the high level of intricacy that they're pulling out. Like all of the side plots, all of the things, and it works. It doesn't feel convoluted. A lot of times if you throw a lot of moving parts in a story, it may muddy it. This feels like we're looking at a storyteller where, a traditional storyline may feel like, it's sitcom writing. It's very basic. It's very straight down the middle. You know what to expect. There might be a swerve every once in a blue moon, but this feels like we're operating on someone that's writing for like a Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, where you have all of these side characters that are interplaying in it. I mean, we had Samoa Joe. Like that whole element played into last night. It started at Collision where MJF accepted him as the partner. You've got Adam Cole coming down. They shoot the classic angle from early 90s WCW where they cart off Sting in the ambulance and he has to make it back in time to defend his title or he would have to forfeit it. They do that angle. There's so much stuff here. And all the shenanigans by the Guns and Jay White. I mean, I thought this was a great way to make this match interesting with the world title between Jay White and MJF is to play up this. I believe was he playing up? Was it a quad injury? I believe.
Yeah, he was taken out from his leg. He definitely was selling all of that. It felt like knee, quad, something like that on the lower half of his body because the Guns, they did some work on him.
Yeah, and at first, he's selling it so much. You're like, how is this going to jeopardize the match? Like, can they really kick into not, the next gear? Can they kick into full gear in this match? And they did. And I thought MJF matches like this do a lot for a babyface. The fighting against all odds, fighting through injury. I thought this was a great main event. If we're talking main event right now, I mean, this was a phenomenal, another top match for MJF in this run.
So we talked about earlier in the night on the 0 hour, MJF was taken out by the Guns after Samoa Joe, who was eventual partner that he did have successfully accepted on Collision, decided to help with the ROH Tag Team Championship. But the real story was after the match. Of course, we mentioned the Guns taking him out. Then we saw the ambulance spot, as you mentioned before, a la Sting, feeling like he's not going to be able to make it back to the arena. And really, the other layer of this is Cole later offering to defend the title for MJF, as White really had the storyline stipulation where he could become champion if he didn't get a shot at Full Gear. Adam Cole did come out, was prepared to start the match on crutches.
They milked it to the right moment. It wasn't like
so good.
It wasn't like his entrance came up, Adam Cole came out while Adam Cole's coming to the ring, MJF's music hit. They got to the point where the match is about to start and you hear the ambulance. It was perfect.
And there was no tease or anything of breaking up between Adam Cole and MJF. And really, the other thing we didn't get was no on-screen appearance of the Devil. Maybe the Devil was busy this night, who knows? But that was really well done because in wrestling, I guess there's a lure of really just like planting seeds and being obvious. And maybe down the line, we're all expecting Adam Cole to turn on MJF, and that is maybe where they should go. But as a wrestling fan or just a fan of watching cinema or TV shows, as you mentioned, we want to believe that that's not where they're going. You want to be invested in the relationship. And I think this is a big step with Adam Cole on one leg, willing to put his health at risk to keep that championship on MJF's waist. This shows how far they've come as as friends and really ultimately brothers. That's the story they're telling here. These guys are tighter than just best friends. They're tighter than blood. They're brothers.
Absolutely. And you got to take into consideration, sure, we've got Adam Cole on our weekly TV popping up on like a video chat call or some pre-tape vignette, but he's really been, for the most part, off of our weekly programming. So I think this Full Gear, having him there on crutches, saying he's going to step in, ankle be damned, and defend for his friend if he can't be there. That was a huge necessary story device to keep this friendship front and center, because I feel like you can't have him turn until he is fully already back in the fold and in our week-to-week TV. If he's going to turn and be the devil down the line, you still have to remind us and build that friendship back up for us, because it was so red hot before his injury. And I think there's a lot they want to accomplish with that before they just have Adam Cole come back and turn on him, if that's the way they go. I was so happy to see Adam Cole involved in the storyline in person. It added so much weight to the story. It reminded us of their brotherhood. It was very well done. I have to ask, though, were you bothered by the devil not being there? Just for me, I got to say, at the end of the night, when MJF and Adam Cole were walking up that ramp, I thought we were going to get something. I thought something was going to come up on the TV, on the Contron. I thought lights were going to go out. Something was going to happen, because if you look at the poster they released, the face of the devil was in the background. So that led a lot of fans to believe like, oh, the devil's going to play a part in this. And I think a lot of people were waiting for that moment. So when you saw that logo bumper pop up and you're like, oh shit, they're going off there, we haven't seen the devil. There was a part of me, it's like, man, that would have been if you would have just put something with the devil, not even something huge, just something at the end, it would have been a good cliffhanger thread to bring people to Dynamite. But having said that, I didn't need it. I wanted it, but it didn't ruin anything for me. It would have been cool to do that for sure. And I think a lot of fans would have popped huge, and it would have been a hell of a way to end the event. But I found myself like, yeah, but it didn't take anything away from me. I did want it, but it didn't ruin anything for me.
I agree with that. And also, extending the story is the goal here. We want it to stretch, I think you guys said on the flagship perfectly, to Revolution. We want this to be long form storytelling. And really, the clue of who it is was his absence. So I think you can really take a lot from that as well. He's still looming large out there.
100%, dude. I
So
thought
his
the
absence
same
right now.
thing.
Exactly.
Like,
so
for story, it makes sense, because if it is Adam Cole, it makes sense that he's not there. And by him not being there and Adam Cole being there, it ramps up the speculation of fans now.
Yeah, in this match, as we said, we had the end of the match, and most of it was focused on MJF's knee injury, which he suffered from the Guns earlier in the night. And we saw him pick up the win and really taking the belt back from Jay White, because that's the other layer of the story. He hasn't had possession of his championship belt. So he countered the Blade Runner by hitting Jay White with the Dynamite Diamond Ring for the pin. And all this was set up with a lot of really well done storytelling. It'd be very easy to convolute this situation with at the end of the finish of this match, because you had the ref getting knocked down. Cole went into the ring to offer the ring to MJF, and then White grabbed it. So then you're kind of panicking like, oh, is this going to be planting the seeds? Jay White's going to get the title here, and they're going to go off on the side program with MJF and Adam Cole. And that was really, I mean, Cole tried to really get MJF back in favor in this match by trying to hit him with the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championship belt. Jay White grabbed that. He hit MJF, which we thought, I mean, that was a great near fall, especially as a fan. That, like, MJF is not losing as a smart fan, but that was a great moment in time where you could suspend belief. Like they might just do this and give it to Switchblade.
Dude, there was a moment when we're watching when he broke out the ROH title shot to MJF. There was a moment where I looked over at Hawk and Sneed and I was like, what if something's going on in the back and they have to take the title off of him and we don't know? Like that could happen right now. And obviously we get the near fall, but that's the expert booking of it. Like they plant that little bit of a doubt in these near falls. That's why near falls are so special. You can go into an event where 99.9% you're pushing all your chips on this person winning. And if they tell a good enough story, they will get you to buy in just a little bit on that near fall. And they made me totally buy in that shit, man. What if Jay White wins?
Absolutely. And that was a great spot in the match where everyone felt like, okay, there's a shot here. But the other spot of this match where, again, we were talking about advancing the story of Adam Cole and MJF was him being locked into the figure four leg lock, selling the knee that he's really hurt. And Adam Cole is teasing throwing that towel in. And would he have been wrong for it? I mean, that is a conversation for another time. Like, would that, if he hypothetically did that, would MJF be like, okay, you care about me as a friend, you don't want further injury, you know, you have to save me from myself of not giving up? Or is it a selfish move because you think you can get the title off Jay White? It's all this great layered storytelling of what is the motive of Adam Cole, what is really the relationship, is it actually on surface the way it is perceived on screen? And that was another spot there where, you know, that's tales all this time in wrestling and athletics. Like there is the, man, maybe we should just throw the towel in. Maybe we should just have MJF just like live to fight another day, because we know he's good enough to get the title back kayfabe wise. You don't want him to damage his knee beyond belief with ligaments in there and stuff. So he was selling great. I mean, he even continued to sell during the scrum, which we'll talk about, crying on the scrum.
Oh, yeah.
Literally crying about his friend Adam Cole and about getting his championship back and being proud of where he's at. And just, man, it's masterfully done as far as storytelling goes.
Whoever added the thread of him teasing the towel, throwing in the towel, kudos to you for adding that little wrinkle to this, because that was another moment where you're thinking that little bit of plot device instantly made you question, like, well, shit, that could be the story. The story could, with their friendship, that could be like the division of, man, you threw it in on me, cost me the title. How could you do that to me? But you cared about me. That's what caused you to do it. So that was ripe for good storytelling. Like that is a path you could have taken that would have totally made sense. So that's getting you. I bought in there. I'm like, would they do that? Would they have him throw? Because if you remember, it kind of works into MJF lore, because when Cody Rhodes went against Chris Jericho for the world title, and he had the stipulation on the line, if I lose against Jericho, I can never challenge for the world title again. The way Cody lost that match is MJF threw the towel in on him. So it would be like that storyline coming back to bite MJF in the ass. So I thought, man, that's something they could do. And again, it was a little bit of a swerve in the match, and I thought it was perfect, dude. So many layers to this. I think for me right now, I know people probably get tired of us always comparing the companies, but they're the top two companies in America. You have to do it. For me right now, I think this storyline has taken over the Bloodline storyline. This is a more compelling storyline than the Bloodline storyline that dominated 2023 for the most part.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, at this point, the Bloodline's on ice. They're waiting. They're biding time. They've definitely been suffered by Roman Reigns not defending his title consistently, not being on TV consistently. And some of booking at this point, bonehead decisions of having Jimmy Uso go back and forth. Now Jey Uso's on Raw, tagging again with Cody Rhodes. Like, it leaves a lot to be desired. But, you know, as we've been talking about with the Bloodline story, and not to get too far into it, anytime that there's a lull, we know they pick it back up. So I'd expect this stretch of time, maybe start in January, as we build up to maybe the culmination, the finale of Roman's reign as champion. They got to put more steam on the Bloodline story. But as far as this one goes, there's a lot of Easter eggs in there. You mentioned the one with the towel for with Cody Rhodes and MJF. There's Easter eggs in there for, giving something to the long-term fan that's invested. If you're
Right.
watching on the surface, you don't need to know that. And there's a fine line of really validating your long-term fans, making them feel just and like, okay, I've dedicated my time, I've dedicated a lot of my fandom into this company, and they're paying it off. But that's
Yes.
also not paired with, you need to know that. It's like,
You don't-
they always struggle with, and even back in the day, and they've gotten so much better out of bringing in the casual fan of just like, you can watch this event and understand emotionally what's going on between the three guys that are really predominantly involved in this. Because if you look at back in the day, they would rely on things going on BTE. They'd expect you to know who Marty Scurll is. They'd expect you to know who Hangman was. You need to know the history that between Adam Cole and Kenny Omega, that Adam Cole was killed off on BTE, and they reference that. And it's a lot of tongue-in-cheek type of stuff where a lot of casual fans felt isolated and left out. And this type of stuff, it is the delicate balance of watching this. Even if you started tuning into AEW in 2023, you still could really immerse yourself and understand Jay White's an asshole. MJF you feel bad for, and Adam Cole is his best buddy. Like, they're right there. That is a surface level story. And then you dig deeper of the iceberg, it goes so far to the ground, bottom of the ocean, really.
100%. I feel like there was an element early on in AEW that casual fans kind of looked at the storytelling a bit snobbish, because it was for the wrestling snobs that knew every little intricate detail of ROH history, New Japan history. Even when they would bring a New Japan guy in, they wouldn't fully explain who it was, so it wasn't hitting with the casuals. I mean, the hardcores were popping for it, but they were like, the casuals like, who is this guy? You haven't educated me. But I feel like they have really done a good job of getting away from that. And great point on the Cody MJF towel throw. It wasn't necessary to the story. If you're a casual fan, you didn't need to know that. But for the longtime AEW fan who's watched every bit of their programming, when you see something like that, it is like Tony Khan throwing a bone to the loyal viewer. Like, you guys know the history here. Think about that for a second. So I love the fan service with that. The people that are entrenched in this company's short history, because we're entering almost year 5 for this company. And now we're getting to a point where we always talk about the one thing WWE has that no company can replicate is their history. And now we're getting to a point about 5 years in where we're starting to have a little bit of those callbacks to the early days of AEW. They're starting to build that history, which is nice.
Absolutely. And this past Sunday marked MJF with a full year as champion. He won it back at Full Gear 2022. He's the company's longest reigning world champion in history. And this was his 10th title defense. So he's been a very defending champion. And the other thing I want to cap this off with was kudos and flowers to Jay White being in this position, because I think there were a lot of doubters for him to be able to step up to the plate. I think at this point, bridging the gap from who he was in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and well-deserved for all the accolades he deserved there. But getting over to AEW, this was a different landscape, a different fan base. A lot of casual fans were unfamiliar with what he was. And there was a lot of conversation about his usage of where it would be on this card, and WWE might have been the best spot for him. And that everyone was saying the decision to go to AEW, who will be lost in really a very deep roster. But he really established himself during this run with the Bullet Club Gold. They're doing some of the best work of all their careers right now. And I want to just, even in a losing effort, Jay White didn't win this match. He's not the world champion. But for this was a litmus test of, can Jay White be a guy that AEW can rely on down the line? And I think a resounding yes echoed through everybody watching this, because he was the best adversary for MJF to be the counter. Because part of this masterful storytelling, you have to have a dastardly heel that's willing to do whatever it takes to take things away from MJF. And Jay White played that role perfectly. And I am looking forward to what is next for him on AEW and the Bullet Club Gold.
100%. I mean, there was a lot of people saying he's going to get lost in the shuffle. And I think they've built him into a legit top tier contender. And not only that, they've built Bullet Club Gold around him as a top faction. One of the more entertaining groups in the company is Bullet Club Gold. Every week they grow on me more and more. And all the shenanigans with the injury after the ROH tag title shot on 0 Hour. Man, Jay White just played it to a T, dude. He was such a good, like you said, dastardly heel. So definitely giving flowers out to Jay White today.
Absolutely. And what a great main event it was. But we're moving into the AEW Women's World Championship. And as we predicted here, Toni Storm walked away with that AEW Women's Championship, and she defeated Hikaru Shida to become a 3-time AEW Women's Champion at Full Gear. So the finish of the match had Storm grab a silver plate she carried to the ring. She put it on her backside. Then she hit Shida with a running hip attack and pinned her to regain the championship. We'll talk about Shida and kind of putting closing remarks on her title reign, but let's stick with Toni Storm here. She lost the title back in August. She had that weird behavior that all her friends in the locker room were kind of concerned, and then she turned on the Outcast and she developed this movie persona that she's taken and run. I mean, she gave herself the nickname Timeless. She has a butler named Lutha, and
awesome.
This was forecasted. And deservingly so. She was going to be at the top of this women's division. She already was prior to this gimmick change. This was the cherry on top of the sundae. She is really doing timeless work here. I mean, this is really great storytelling as far as women's wrestling goes. And we said that for really all companies, it's kind of been void outside of Impact, well-defined characters that you can get behind. And Toni Storm is just the right mix of just eccentric and it's over the top wrestling, but it's also, what she can do. She won the title that she holds right now 2 other times. Yeah. So it's not like she needed this gimmick to win the championship. This just took it to the next level, and great match. We'll talk about Shida in a second, but Toni Storm, kudos. Bravo.
Kudos.
Standing ovation.
Standing ovation. How storybook is it that she wins her title back for the 3rd time, tying Shida. Now her and Shida lead in title reigns with 3 apiece. And how fitting for her to win in Los Angeles, California. Just a stone's throw away from Hollywood, baby, at the Forum. It was the cherry on top. I know some people, I guess some people think maybe it's a little too silly. I think it's the perfect blend. Toni is a bona fide badass in the ring. She's one of my favorite female performers of any company. I think she's seasoned. She's been doing it forever. She's been at the top of my list since her NXT UK days. She's a killer performer. Now we're seeing her tap into this character, throwing herself in it that is at the same time bizarre, funny, compelling, completely original. So I'm bought in that regard. It really gives me shades of early 90s Goldust.
Yeah,
it really does. Like the package, the way they go into the widescreen format with the black and white, and even the scratchy audio they use in her backstage, everything fits. It's so 1994, 1995 Goldust to me, or 96. I can't remember when he debuted, but that early version of Goldust, I think she's doing killer work right now. I think she, along with someone else we're going to talk about, Julia Hart, I think her and Julia Hart are at the top of the division right now solely because of character work.
Yep.
They're good in the ring, but it just goes to show you, if you really invest and throw yourself into a character, it really makes fans open their hearts to you and gravitate towards you if you're telling a good story through your character work.
And you mentioned before, I mean, separating themselves from the roster, and who's doing it better than Julia Hart and Toni Storm? They are completely different than the rest of the roster, and they have stood head and shoulders, and deservingly so. They are now holding the 2 premier women's championship belts in AEW, and we'll talk about Julia Hart. The character work has been immense, but Toni Storm, like, even though you knew this was happening, it felt like a really awesome moment. And for Shida, she has been that bridge for new champions and giving her flowers. She was the first ever 3-time champion. She's only been champion for 39 days. She beat Saraya back Title Tuesday, October 10th. So wasn't a long reign, but I think it was very necessary to get to where we wanted to go. So I wouldn't just discount this as a transitional champion type of stuff. I know people want to use that term. This was strategic. I think it had to be Shida to pass the torch to Toni Storm. Not that Sheeta's not going to be involved in big title picture eventually down the line. I'd expect her to have 4, 5, maybe 6 title reigns down the line for herself. But she was the perfect person to put in this spot to help Toni Storm get to the next level, because who's more respected than Sheeta in front of the fans as far as women's wrestling goes on this roster?
I'm with you. I think it was a strategic move too. Sure, you can throw out the transitional champion things, but to me, it was all about strategy, because if Tony, if Saraya dropped that title to Tony instead of Sheeta, you're kind of throwing us into a feud that should have a little more. Saraya and her former friends and the Outcasts, that's a story that you can get some life out of if you want to reheat Saraya to come back and get that title from her former stablemate. So there's something to be said about Sheeta, and Sheeta has proven herself, man. She doesn't need big long reigns anymore. People forget that Sheeta carried this very young division at the time on her back during the pandemic, giving banger matches against Britt Baker. I mean, they were holding it down. And now with Toni Storm, Sheeta has really established herself as a premier top of the card wrestler. I love Sheeta. I think she's a breath of fresh air in the division. I think she always puts on entertaining matches. And man, like, I think this division's got a lot of hope for it, because people forget we've got 2 major people just chilling on the sidelines right now who are going to come back at some point, and Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter. They're still out there. They will return. I guess one thing I want to ask you, what did you think of the plate spot? The putting the silver plate. I thought it was some people were kind of, negative on it. I thought it worked for a heel tactic, especially with that move. That's one of her more devastating moves she pulls out of her arsenal, and to use that, I thought it worked really nice.
It was silly, and that's the thing. That's what, like, it would. What would you expect Toni Storm, timeless Toni Storm, to win a match with? A armbar? Like, what are we doing? She's someone that is over the top, and a silver plate from her butler just fits the script, if you will. Like, it's in tune with who she is, and it just shows how well defined her character has become. That her character is working in sequence with what the wrestler is doing in the ring, because there's a disconnect for a lot of gimmicks in history of wrestling. I'm sure you guys can close your eyes and picture some, where the promos, the vignettes, the backstage stuff, the stuff that's happening outside the ring really resonates. It feels great. But then when you see the person in the ring, what does it become? It doesn't have the same reverence, because how could you translate it? And I think Toni's doing her best to really translate this really over the top, goofy gimmick. Same thing Goldust. Like, I think Goldust, a great comparison, is he does some of the theatrics. She does some of the theatrics inside the ring, where she's eccentric. Again, going back to the casual fan watching for the first time, like, who is this crazy lady that believes she's in 1940s black and white picture? And again, black and white picture, she used a butler silver plate to win the match. Like, I couldn't have thought up a better something different. I mean, unless she's going to hit him with one of those, like, the director cut things, like,
right,
like that it was right on. That would have been too on the nose. This was at least kind of out there.
Yeah, right on brand for the character. And kudos to Luther. The addition of the butler is not being given its credit as much. I mean, Luther is killing it, essentially being the Marlena to her Goldust. You know what I mean?
True.
Like,
yeah,
that's what he is right now. And I love the little extra thing. Like, we might be seeing a little group here with Toni coming out with her super fan and Mariah May, and with her butler. That's a package I like seeing on my TV.
So fantastic. So I'm excited to see where this reign goes. But moving into the AEW International Championship, we had Orange Cassidy defeating Jon Moxley. And of course, this was the main event of All Out. Everyone was looking forward to this match. Of course, on this road to get to this International Championship match between these two greats, we had obviously injury. Jon Moxley had the concussion at a Grand Slam. So now we're sitting here. Okay, this is where they're going to go. They're going to right the ship. But they went a different direction. This was really an excellent story in the ring told here, with Orange Cassidy finally able to slay his dragon, if you will, as cliche as that is. Jon Moxley gave him everything he'd have, and Orange Cassidy kept standing in the pocket, and he had to absolutely throw the kitchen sink at Jon Moxley to get the win. This isn't done. This is not done. I mean, at this point, we have the need for a rubber match, Chad. Like at this point, we have to see them again. I'm not sure if I want to wait. I think we probably should wait a little bit. I don't think this was as good as the All Out main event, and how could it be just because of the stage that All Out provided with the main event. But this was a very, very great match that stood out on this card. And I think it had the opportunity to be overshadowed because of all the other stuff. But I thought they did a good job of making the International Championship feel important still. And while at the same time, trying to right the ship of what has gone down. And the easy out would have been like, okay, back on track. Jon Moxley's our champion. But I think we'll eventually get there. But I think they're continuing to tell the story with Orange Cassidy. Okay, he's overcoming the odds and, back on the horse. Let's get this title back to where it should be and where it was.
Yeah, I thought they were just going to kind of course correct back to where they were with Moxley taking that title back. I enjoyed the fact that they didn't go that route. I'm with you. There's obviously a rubber match in the future. Who knows? They might pull out a cage match between the two or something wild to settle the score. But also, I wouldn't be opposed if this is a way to maybe they have another plan in store for Moxley and they send Moxley off to do something else. I'm still waiting for a legit heel run for Mox. I think as good as the company is with, Christian Cage being a heel and Jay White and things like that, I do think the company could use a couple bona fide heels, a couple more. And Mox is such a good heel when he's just full tilt in. I think BCC teeters on some of that, but they're a little more tweener anti-hero to me. They're not full on yet. So I wouldn't be opposed to seeing where Mox could go, how he could work into some other feud, someone else. That's what's exciting about this division, man. There is so many top card guys that have yet to be involved in storylines together that I think back to, when Hangman and Swerve, when Swerve came out and went face to face with Hangman and we're like, oh shit, this is a fresh feud, fresh matchup that I didn't know I wanted. And now I want it. I think there's there's matchups out there like that still for Mox, where when he walks out and challenges someone, we're going to be like, oh man, this is a dream scenario. He could be used to elevate guys like Miro and Andrade and Malachi Black and these guys that we have that we think they haven't reached their true heights in AEW. Throw Mox in with one of those guys and bring them up to their level. I would like to see something like that.
And as far as Orange goes, I think he'd be well suited for another program similar to the Mox Blood feud that they had with each other, because I don't want to see them do the same or run the same playbook they had where Orange was this beat up champion. Maybe he goes on a dominant run here where he's like, I wouldn't say squashing guys, but having maybe an easier time, not as beat up. He's kind of building up the confidence. I don't know. They have to make sure that they continue to have this relevant, and they're in the right track here because this match really was shaking things up to get it to the point where, okay, this title is back. It means something again. But
here's the thing too. I think a lot of fans, sometimes we forget, is we say this. I don't think this match part 2 lived up to the first one, but you got to remember there is a flow to a wrestling card. That first match they had was a main event. That was a match where it's like, okay, let's go out. We have to prove why we're the main event. With this match, there were so many so many matches ahead of it on the card that I feel like it was a great match, but the purpose of this match wasn't to be better than that main event. I feel like it was just supposed to be a phenomenal next chapter in the feud, but it didn't have that main event expectation to it. So it didn't bother me that it didn't meet those expectations, because I didn't think it would, based off of the placement on the card.
absolutely. And we had the AEW Tag Team Championship being defended in a ladder match, which we found out on Collision that this stipulation was added to this already great 4-way that was going to be for these prestigious championships. And Ricky Starks and Big Bill defeated FTR, House of Black, and La Facción Ingobernable in a ladder match. So we had the pairing of Malachi Black and Brody King representing House of Black Roosh and Preston Vance representing LFI. And as far as ladder matches go,
Roosh
this
and
was a great one.
Dralistico.
Oh, Dralistico. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dralistico was in this match. I think originally they announced it was Preston Vance. I remember seeing the card that it was Preston Vance. So
yeah, I think they were toying with it, and then Dralistico showed out though. He
took
was
the Gonzo bomb from Brody King on that ladder, which was probably the
Great.
most devastating, violent spot in all of the match.
Yeah, this was a fun match, and going into it, we made our picks on the flagship, and I picked that Ricky and Big Bill would retain. This is anytime you get a 3-way, a 4-way, and you've got champions that have yet to really solidify themselves, I feel like it's the perfect opportunity for them to retain without any of the other guys losing any steam behind them. Yeah, you could have put it on House of Black. You could have easily put it on LFI. I didn't see FTR winning them back in this way because they just had that legendary long run. But I think the right move was made. I think Ricky and Big Bill, if you would have taken these titles off of them, it would have felt like another start-stop moment with Ricky Starks. Like, you have to keep him hot. Like, he's suffered so much from outside things affecting his pushes. From, he had the program with Danielson gets hurt. I believe he was having a program with who was the other? There was another
Punk.
CM Punk gets fired. There was a lot of stuff like where he was really getting heated up, and then something happened. So if you would have taken the titles off of him here, it would have hurt him. It would have been another start-stop moment. So I'm glad they kept it on Ricky and Big Bill, and I'm enjoying them. I don't think they've yet found themselves, but they're gelling. I like their matches. I think Big Bill is a highly underrated big man. The dude impresses the shit out of me. This transformation he's made in the last 3 or 4 years, like, hats off to Will Morrissey, because he's crushing it. And he's really, like, impressed me lately. Over the last 6-7 months, he's really impressed me. So I'm glad they kept the titles on him.
Yeah, and like you said, Big Bill and Ricky Starks are coming into their own. They have a very Shawn Michaels Diesel feel to them, with
Yes.
Big Bill coming out there and looming behind Ricky Starks, who's the tough guy with a loud mouth. But everyone in this match got time to shine, which is hard to do. And obviously ladder matches are structured in a way where there'd be a whole bunch of big spots, but it feel like it was fairly distributed, where it wasn't just focused on some of the guys that are willing to take risks. It felt like it was just kind of an eclectic mix of everyone doing what they do well. And I thought that was really well done, where it all made sense as well. Like, Ricky Starks kind of filled the void of where he needed to be. And then Dax and Cash, like, this is sort of out of their element, being more ground-based wrestlers, but I thought they had an ability to take some risk in their own right, but also kind of stay true to who they are. And it makes sense that Ricky Starks and Big Bill could escape a situation like this by climbing a ladder. Like, they didn't have to pin anybody. This puts more heat on them because they're heels. They escape by the skin of their teeth. And this tag division's coming into their own. And I'm telling you, man, LFI, whatever combination it winds up being, Roosh and Preston Vance, Roosh and Dralistico and Preston Vance, it's going to be eventually them as champions. I think they are setting the stage here. And again, I'll say it again, put it out into the ether. We want it to happen. Roosh needs to be in the main event in some capacity. The guy is just money to me. So put Roosh in a big spot that is premier. I thought he did a good job of showing out again. As always, he does. The guy's just intensity personified.
Yeah, I think LFI, the fans are behind them too. Like, the fans are enjoying them. And if you're a person who watches all of the product and not just Dynamite, they did a really good job of setting up this faction's return with LFI, with all of the vignettes shot in Mexico, kind of the cartel kind of vibe going on. And we got those for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they finally make their return, and people were happy to see them because they had those vignettes. I always stress vignettes are a powerful tool when you pull them out for a return. Every now and then you want that shocking return, but I thought they pulled out that vignette style return, and it really added a lot. I think it's really giving a lot to Preston. We're all fans of Roosh. I mean, we love Roosh. We think he's main event level talent. He's a former ROH world champion back in the heyday of ROH.
Yep.
So I mean, he is like, he has that pedigree. But Preston Vance is getting a lot from this. We're talking about a guy who's coming from Dark Order, 10
under a mask too.
Under a mask. and he's rejuvenating himself. Dude has proven that he's willing to get down and dirty. And Dralistico, he's becoming one of those premier, fun to watch luchadors. So I love the LFI stable. I think they're crushing it. My big question coming out of this, especially after the TBS title match with Julia Hart, my big question mark is not so much with the tag titles or LFI or FTR. It's what are we doing with House of Black? Like when are we going to pull the trigger and put them in a legit, compelling, week to week, long-term storyline? I think you got to transition Malachi into a main event scene at some point. He has to become a player similar to how they did Swerve, making him seem like a main event guy. I want to see 2024 become the year of Malachi, like stepping up into that scene. I really hope they go that way.
Maybe the International Championship is just the program for him. I mean, it's a main event, a Jace type of program. Orange Cassidy, Malachi is a cool mix of styles. And just like Orange trying to no-sell some of the stuff that's spooky with House of Black and just trying to remain cool, calm, and collected as he always is. It could be fun. And especially we talked about setting the stage for Orange to have not just these open challenges, just going down the line of just defeating guys by just surviving. I would like to see him have meaningful emotional program with Malachi and House of Black trying to get in Orange's head. And like that could be fun.
Yeah. And you have a built-in thread between the groups because Julia Hart has this history with Chris Statlander, 2 title matches against
100%.
her. Statlander's buddies with Orange and the best friends. There's that kind of tie. Yeah.
Speaking of Chris Statlander, she defended her TBS championship against Julia Hart and Sky Blue. And as we mentioned, Julia Hart is the new TBS champion. So Hart pinned Sky Blue in the triple threat match. Chris Statlander was not involved in the fall. This is Julia Hart's first championship. Statlander hit Blue with the Saturday Night Fever. Hart threw Statlander aside, stole the pin. So the story's there where, Statlander got that huge rub off for Jade Cargill in that run and defeating her for the title. You didn't want to give it away here. I think eventually Statlander probably will be pinned by somebody, but she has a right to say, listen, I wasn't pinned. It was a triple threat match. They used it perfectly. Sky Blue, that was her role in this match to take the pinfall in some capacity, whether it was going to be Statlander or Julia Hart. Because Julia Hart, outside of just this match, she's been on a run, dude. Like 14 out of 15 matches in 2023. She has come out victorious. Her only defeat came out the hands of Statlander in a previous TBS championship bout one-on-one. So that is further layering the story of it took a triple threat match with someone else involved for you to beat me. So I don't think this story is done. But, as far as Julia Hart defining her character, her rise in the last, we mentioned, I think 3 months, they really started to put the heat on her. 3rd ever TBS champion. It's just amazing to see what happened with her. She was the valet for the Varsity Blondes.
She was a cheerleader.
She's here. She's sitting here now as the TBS champion, the 3rd ever, a belt that has a lot of prestige. Jade Cargill established that, cemented in the history of AEW. And it doesn't seem surprising because, like we said, she's been on a roll and she's getting better and better in the ring. And fans are reacting to her. And it's all because of the character work paired with the athleticism, but it's mostly the character work.
The character work has elevated her so much. And I mean, like you said, the lineage of this title, only the 3rd champion in the reign. Jade Cargill really cemented the belt. She was 18 years old when she came into this company. She's 22 years old. The transformation she's made, the way she has given herself over to Malachi and the fellas in House of Black, and they've really helped shape her character. She said, she leans on those guys for inspiration and what to really tap into. They call her, the princess of the House of Black, the keeper of secrets. I love that shit, man. That's the stuff that really resonates with me, is these little nuances. I'm excited to see where this goes. And one thing I want to say, like, there's a lot of negativity out there with people going after Sky Blue in the ring and going after Julia Hart in the ring. I think that's so a very just hater-esque take, because if these girls are both extremely young in pro wrestling, and if you've been watching them since they came into AEW and you have yet to give them credit for improving in the ring, you're just hating, dude. I can't take you seriously, because they have they have grown leaps and bounds. And I'm a fan, as a wrestling fan, I'm a fan of watching young talent get better. I think that's a part of the fun of watching a young talent kind of step into those shoes and really own it and improve week to week. For me, this match I thought was better than Tony Storm and Sheeta. I liked Tony Storm and Sheeta, but I was very impressed in this match, dude. Some of the moves Sky Blue was pulling off. I forget the sunset flip counter that she did was incredible. I just got to give my flowers to these two. The younger Statlander's solid, but Julia and Sky, man, they've came so far. A lot of pressure on this division. You know, everyone's kind of always slighting this division. I feel like they're making a claim like, hey, man, if you give us time and you give us, we can do something here. And I think they're doing a great job. I really do. I think the improvements they're making, I had a lot of fun with this match. And so I just wanted to, give them their credit because it's so easy for haters online to just shit on Sky and Julia and the women's division. And it's pretty unfair, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. They both come so far, and the women's division has come such a long way since they established the company. And the young talent being pushed here, that's what you want here. That's what you want, young talent to be featured in a big way. And she, got to remember, like you said, Julie Hart is learning on the fly. Sky Blue is learning on the fly. And, the character work really does mask a lot of the whatever the weakness or shortcomings in the ring for not just her, but for other people. We mentioned Tony Storm. She's a great wrestler. She doesn't have to because the character work is just what she's doing. And, biggest stars in wrestling didn't have to have, 5-star matches. We know that. And you're going to get 5-star matches on this card up and down the list. You need to stand out. So how are you standing out? And it's character work and well-defined. What's your agenda? And Julie Hart feels like what she's about. She wants to wreak havoc on the roster. Her allegiance is to House of Black. She pledges loyalty to them. And then the rest kind of falls into place here. Now she's the champion. So where are they doing? Where are they going with that?
It's
great.
Very, very interesting. It makes me care. It's a storyline. You guys want story in the women's division? Dude, look no further than Timeless Tony Storm and Julia Hart, the princess of the House of Black. Like, this is what makes me, when their segments pop up, I'm like, ooh, what's the next step here? They have to follow through. They have to continue to give us compelling stuff, but they're on the right track. I just know in the match itself, a lot of times with the green wrestlers, you see it's not so much the moves, the big moves that draw my attention to, the youthfulness of their abilities. It's more the transitions in between, the flow of it. You can see that it's a little more herky jerky. They're not flowing. This match, I felt like these ladies were flowing. Like, I wasn't seeing the start stop. And hats off to all three women in this match. I thought it was the big surprise of the night for me. This was the match where I was like, damn, this is a fucking good match, man. I was vibing to this match.
So our next match here was a Texas death match, and this will go down as one of the more violent matches in not only AEW history, but I think North American wrestling history, because if you didn't watch this, there's a lot of spots on here that, let's just go with the grossest one. The most visual one was
drinking
the blood of Swerve Strickland. And there were a lot of conversations. I mean, this thing went viral. It was formed in GIFs. It was on Twitter. It was on Instagram. It was the only thing you saw kind of popping up. But outside of that one spot, it got more violent from there. I mean, just the levels of hardcore. This wasn't just, let's slap a stipulation on it, call it something, sell some tickets. These dudes lived up to it. This was a death match. This could have lived on any death match tournament, GCW, going over to ICW, whatever you want. This match was every bit as advertised. The blood, the guts, the emotional storytelling that had you believing that these dudes hated each other. And maybe they do. But this was just like, man, my one surprising thing was Swerve coming out with the victory here, but it is strategic.
Loved it.
We mentioned that we're establishing Swerve as a main eventer here, and now he has 2 wins over Hangman. And be it, there's a lot of conversation. I think Dave put it on Twitter talking about, this could have been, the best match of the year, if not for the finish. For you, did the interference in the finish take away from this match for you, or do you think it added because Swerve was a heel?
Hell no, it didn't take away from it. This was part. I mean, you could say it's overbooked, but it was a Texas death match, man. Like all rules are thrown out the window. He's a heel. He's a dishonorable heel. Of course his boys are going to come in. Of course Brian Cage is going to try and throw a wrench in. I thought it was everything I wanted and more. Now, when we were watching Hawk, when the finish came and Swerve won, Hawk was like, that was the wrong move. Hangman should have won. They should have evened it up 1-1. And I'm like, no, man. The point of this match for me, and I thought Hangman was going to win. I picked Hangman. I thought we were going to get some rubber match blow off at World's End or something, but it makes all the sense in the world. You just gave Hangman doesn't need to beat Swerve. He's a former world champion in AEW. I don't think this loss hurt him at all. I think this feud with Swerve has elevated him and made us remember how badass Hangman is. Nothing hurt him in this loss, but it did everything for Swerve. Swerve is now a bona fide main eventer. He can go and fight anyone in that roster, Kenny Omega, MJF, anyone at the top of the card. I'm buying. Like, yeah, Swerve deserves to be there. And the brutality of this match, unreal, so good. And I loved the drinking the blood spot. So essentially, Swerve is like, he's bleeding like a stuck pig out of his forehead. He's kind of leaning over. Hangman's on the bottom. Hangman pulls him down, opens his mouth and lets the blood drip into his mouth, then stands up and pulls a Triple H 2000, blows the blood into the air like a bottle of water. I was freaking out and loving every minute of it just because I knew that if you're not into that shit, all the Fed brain, everyone out there, it just turns the stomachs of those people. And I love that. I love making those people uncomfortable, because this is why this company is different. This is why this company is a alternative to the industry leader. I don't want there's too much blood. This isn't WWE, dude. If you don't want blood, go watch Disney, McDonald's, Walmart wrestling. That's fine. You can do that. They have good stuff. They have their own brand. I watch it. I like some of the stuff they do. But when I tune into AEW and they give me these visceral, brutal moments like this, it reminds me that, yes, there's a different philosophy here. They're willing to take it to the fucking edge. And that's why I love this company. Me and Sneed, we were all freaking out like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. So many spots with the staple gun, so many spots with the barbed wire chair. This was the crazy thing. This was the longest match on the card. This was 10 seconds longer than the main event at 29 minutes and 55 seconds. The main event was 29 minutes and 45 seconds. So they put all their chips on the table for this Texas death match. And I think there's an argument to be had that this might be one of the best Texas death matches of all time.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you hear that a lot in AEW. You hear that with the Iron Man match between MJF and Bryan Danielson. That could have been one of the best. The dog collar match between Punk and MJF. That could have been an all-time dog collar match. Now they put their stamp on the Texas death match stipulation. I love it. I was so invested in this match. It was my favorite match of the night.
This was now the benchmark for Texas Deathmatch going forward. And now the marching orders for right now is to capitalize on Swerve Strickland's momentum and continue to launch him into superstardom, because it's right there.
Yep.
It's right at the fingertips. I'm not saying put the title on him yet. I'm not saying make him beat MJF, but you have to continue to advance stories. The last thing you need is to put Swerve in the background. Even after this Swerve Hangman feud is over, Swerve needs to continue to be emphasized. He's proven he can hold his own. Like you said, this might be one of the matches of the year, and it's a late contender for it. It'll definitely be on a lot of people's ballots, but this was every bit living up to a stipulation. And it's very rare in wrestling where you have a match that lives up to what it's being billed as. We see it all the time, but Texas Deathmatch, this is they've done a handful of them here in AEW, like you mentioned, but this was the one that really established themselves on the map. This is one people are going to remember for a very, very long time. And that's all you're looking for. And two guys with a blood feud going all out and giving a love letter to GCW and giving a love letter to Deathmatch at large. It was, I mean, as a Deathmatch wrestling fan, not much more you can ask for.
Yeah, and if you know Swerve's history, Swerve on the indies, man, he's not afraid to get down and dirty. So I knew he's a wild man.
Hangman too, dude. Like Hangman was doing some crazy stuff prior. So
yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm just so high on Swerve. And it's just a testament to the booking of him. I love the package with Nana. I like Mogul Embassy, and it's a far cry. Remember when it was Mogul Affiliates and everyone was shredding that? Boy, how the tables have turned. Like if you wait and they have a vision for a guy, just be patient, give him some time, because they have taken Swerve from Swerve in Our Glory through Mogul Affiliates into Mogul Embassy. Now with this Nana affiliation, man, and now 2 wins over Hangman. What's next for Swerve? That he is when I tune into Dynamite or Collision or Rampage for that matter, he's a guy I'm waiting to see on my screen. I love Swerve Strickland. He's a top 5 guy for me right now. I cannot wait for him to go after that world title, because it's coming within the next year and a half. He will be going after that world title.
So moving into what was a very anticipated match, and it wound up being the opener for the pay-per-view. The crowd was very much into this. Sting, Darby Allin, and Adam Copeland defeated Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, and Nick Wayne. Obviously, that spot in the card is very important to set the stage for the night. But I really liked how they structured this match with the heat being built. With Copeland wanting to ultimately get his hands on Christian Cage, he wanted to make sure that, he's made it clear he doesn't want to wrestle Christian no matter what. They've been friends for life. But the fact that we have Darby Allin playing that sympathetic baby face that he does so well, like so beaten down, and you want to jump through the screen and defend him. This is just beginning, though. This is the entry point into the story. This is chapter 1. Maybe it's even the prequel. It's not even like, they're doing so that the prologue in the book. They have just started this here, and they're waiting for the eventual payoff, which is Adam Copeland versus Christian Cage. And this is perfectly done. And again, the other side story, and it's not really a side story, but it's Sting's retirement tour. Getting showcased in a match like this was important on a pay-per-view. Really well done. And this was a perfect choice for an opener. It's hard to pick out of this card what would be the opener, but this was the perfect choice. Nice party match to get the crowd flowing.
And I love the entrance for Edge, Sting, with the bats, all 3 bats.
So
it was such a fun.
It had to be for Edge too, like to come out there with the face paint on, and so sick.
You had, I mean, Edge rocking the white and black and the face paint with Darby, with Sting. What a monumental moment for Adam Copeland to be right there in Sting's final farewell tour. You had Ric Flair on the outside. Gotta say, man, I'm liking the way they're using Flair so far. They're not overdoing it. He came out that first night on Dynamite a couple weeks back, and he shows up tonight, so it's used sparingly. And I really enjoyed the spot between him and Christian on the outside when Christian gives him the nut shot, lays him out. Flair taking bumps in his 70s. It was just this match had everything. It had the young talent of Darby and Nick Wayne. It had the icon of Sting. It had 50-year-old Adam Copeland crushing it with one of the hottest heels in the business, Christian. You got the big monster in Luchasaurus. I'm loving this whole package, and I love that this story is it's just a piece on the road of this story of Edge and Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. I think we have yet to really see this story hit its true peaks. Like, it's going to be a fun road. This is a good story to follow.
So the one thing I want to mention in the quick hitters, we had Tony Schiavone on his podcast talking about wanting to see the return of Surfer Sting during this run. So Chad, as a lifelong Stinger, is that something you want to see maybe in his final match coming out as the classic Surfer look, or is it something like, okay, we've moved far past that?
I wouldn't be opposed to him having a match on the way to the final match where he pulls out the colorful old school early 90s Surfer Sting makeup. I don't want to see brother bleaching his hair and spiking it again. I'm out on that. He's not rocking too much hair up top anymore. I think that if he bleaches that hair, he might not get it back. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he can go that far. But as far as leaning into the colorful early 90s pink and neon green and give us some of that, I'm all for that. That would be fun. I don't know if I want to see that as the final match. It could be poetic in a sense, but I think the Crow Sting has just become such an iconic look. I think you can tip your cap to the Surfer Sting days, but I don't think that's the way he goes out at the end.
I think the perfect way to tip it would be to keep the Crow makeup, but change the colors up, like you mentioned, have like a neon pink, lines on it with maybe a base of blue or something, or yellow, and then have the same shirt with the stinger on it, but make it bright colored. I mean, sell some more merch. Why not? And then the tights, could just put colored tights. And then that's the perfect mix. Everyone will know what you're alluding to. We saw someone, Punk did the Sting makeup too when they teamed up. So there's been allusions to Surfer Sting, and I think they probably will make it down the line, because that is, a lot of people, that's their Sting. So you want to make sure if we're doing this farewell tour and waving goodbye, you want to check that box as well. So
absolutely. And they've done a good job of kind of playing the hits of Sting's career. There was even a moment where they kind of played up the Joker Sting of TNA days. So they're giving us little nods to his past. So I think we'll see that one more time before he hangs it up.
So we're moving into the Golden Jets. Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho took on the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson. And the stipulation here was the winner gets an AEW tag team title shot. And if the Golden Jets lose, they had to disband. So the one thing about this match, and of course, it is a product of the night of long wrestling. Crowd was exhausted here. But really, they worked them up into a fervor in the second half of this match. And once they did finally get going, and I thought it was expertly done for the best to ever do it, they turned this into a really fun contest. And with the win, the Golden Jets now officially have an AEW tag team title shot that the Bucks won a couple of months back. We thought it was going to be potentially FTR versus the Young Bucks again. We've moved past that. Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho now will get a shot. There's a chance that they can beat Big Bill and Ricky Starks. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
There's definitely a chance if Tony gets it in his head, he wants to see these two guys with gold around their waist. I think there's definitely a possibility of that. I will say, I think it's an expert way to continue to build Ricky Starks. You have him just beat these three great tag teams in this ladder match tonight. And then you have him in a ring with Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega in a feud. If you would allow Ricky Starks and Big Bill to get that win, I think it would do a lot for Ricky instead of, taking the titles off of him again. I like this match a lot. I like the meltdown the Bucks have at the end, continuing to push the heel thing. A telltale sign with the Bucks too, when they're leaning into those heel tactics, when they come out and they do their pose at the top of the ramp, they blow out the money dollars, man. The dollars are flying. But bad Bucks are back, so I'm all in for that. And I really love the spot, the tease of Kenny Omega trying to maybe realigning with the Elite when Jericho's hanging over the ropes and you think he's going to hit the V trigger on Jericho. Instead, he bounces off the ropes and smashes a Jackson with a V trigger. Great moment in the match. I love this match. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So, final thoughts on Full Gear. Really, really great show. Definitely well worth the money. I feel like we are in a good spot as far as storytelling goes. And, we're moving into what will eventually be 2024. We have one more pay-per-view, of course. We have some more tentpole events. Like we said, winter is coming down the line, some big dynamites and collisions. But we're approaching the end of this year, and it is a year that, comparing it to 2022, they're in a better shape at the end of 2023 than they were at the end of 2022.
2023 is a tale of two times. The first half of 2023 was really embroiled in bullshit and them launching Collision and trying to get back on track. And then all of the calamity at All In with Punk gets fired. And since that moment, it's like they have hit this storytelling stride from the top to the bottom of the card that I think is unmatched right now. I think every week, every segment you see is dedicated to some story, whether it's a low card story or the top of the card. They're doing a really good job. 2023 is proving to be solid so far. And with Winter is Coming looming, World's End at the end of the year, I think they have an opportunity to make this maybe one of the best years they've ever had. I truly believe that. With the Continental Classic coming up, I thought it was a hell of a card. The only thing, if I want to nitpick, I would have liked some sort of Devil involvement just to keep that thread, but not having the Devil here, I'll appreciate it when that's not gone. The Devil is still looming, and now they're stretching it. My biggest fear was them just pulling the trigger on revealing the guy. I don't want this guy revealed. I want them to stretch it as long as they can without making it, without wearing itself out. It's the most compelling story they have. Why would you just hit it over the head too much? But yeah, great event.
So I know you guys are asking yourself, wasn't there supposed to be a debut? Who was signed? Well, that's big story number 2. Let's get to it.
Big Story 2.
So at Full Gear, AEW promised to unveil a new member of the promotion's roster. And here, as you can see with the graphic here, Will Ospreay is all elite. So it was announced during AEW Full Gear on Saturday that Ospreay had officially signed with the company. So at Ospreay coming to the ring, and he said he would not begin immediately as he spent 8 years at New Japan Pro Wrestling and he wants to finish his commitments there. He said, however, I will start at AEW Revolution during that season, the build to it. And as we know, the time and place for that, so you can kind of mark it on your calendars knowing he'll be back involved. But right as Ospreay was introduced, Tony Khan put the tweet out, so it's official. We had this reported and confirmed by Sports Illustrated and Fightful. It's multi-year. We don't have the exact parameters of it. But the other conversation that we've been having week after week on here is it WWE? Is it going to be Impact? Is he going to continue to work on the independents? He has indicated in recent weeks that he was exploring his options. We know that. I mean, he is the highest touted free agent looking for life-changing money. He said he was interested in coming to the U.S., which narrowed it down. It was either really WWE or AEW, with the dark horse being TNA/Impact, especially with his good, the good feelings that were coming out of him being there with Speedball at Bound for Glory.
Right.
And at the tapings with Josh Alexander, he came out glowingly talking about the roster. He's right now set for Wrestle Kingdom 18. He's going to be wrestling David Finlay and Jon Moxley in the 3-way for that new title that's going to be replacing the IWGP US or UK title. So we're going to see him kind of phase out of New Japan Pro Wrestling in full, but they made it clear that the relationship between New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW will continue to allow him to not just fully disappear from that audience, which to me has to feel like the biggest bargaining chip that AEW had, the flexibility for him to continue to do the Rev Pros, continue to do whatever he wants to do to be creative, scratch that itch, but also have the stability that this long-term contract provides with AEW.
Absolutely. Freedom. That's the big ploy that AEW has over WWE. And everyone's like, well, why wouldn't you take the big money? Look, AEW can shell out money too. Khan's got money. So if you've got money to match, what's the other thing you have to offer that the industry leader does not have? It's freedom.
Right.
When you go to WWE, you're going to be locked up. And judging by his media scrum after the event where he spoke about it, Ospreay is not ready to water himself down and kind of throttle back on his match style. He's 30 years old. He still wants to wrestle the way he wants to wrestle. He doesn't want to go in and do that PC kind of buff out the edges of his style. This was, to me, the obvious. Impact was intriguing because he could have really legitimized, not that TNA is not legitimate, but to have a name like Ospreay join your company, it's going to elevate you. So I liked the concept of that. I was fearful that he would go to WWE, but AEW is the no-brainer. I mean, just from the freedom standpoint, like you said, he's still going to be able to do Wrestle Kingdoms if he wants. Mox is still doing stuff with New Japan, so there's a freedom there. He's built in. Look at the way AEW pushed Ospreay at All In. It was a big moment. Now the possibility is there that he could main event All In next year in August. Like that's a very real possibility that Ospreay is at the top of that card in London. he's built in with the Don Callis family. Like there's a lot there that he's established with this company. And like he said, he's grown a trust and rapport with Tony Khan. And let's be honest, when you're going into WWE as an outsider, I think there's a healthy dose of mistrust going into that company. Like, yeah, they can sweet talk me and tell me they're going to do this, that, and the other for me. And obviously under the WWE umbrella, you're going to have the eyes of the world watching you. But nothing is guaranteed in the way they're going to handle you week to week, the way they're going to book you. And I think a little bit of that distrust makes guys who are very kind of an uncaged animal and get to fly freely. I think guys like that look at that as a detriment to signing there sometimes. You know, I think there's definitely the people that being in WWE, that's the main event, that's WrestleMania, every kid's dream. But people lean on that a lot more than it needs to be leaned on. I think this is a new era of wrestling where there are wrestlers out there that AEW is becoming the place that is more compelling to go to. They don't need that WrestleMania moment. They like having the freedom, and you're on weekly TV. Like that's what blew my mind. Ospreay was talking about on the Scrum is where he's like, I've been with New Japan Wrestling for 8 years and I've yet to be on a weekly live TV show. This guy, seeing him every week, live TV, that's exciting.
Absolutely. And I've definitely been singing the praise of Will Ospreay. I think he owns 9 of the last 10 best matches of 2023. And by all accounts, he will be a proud owner of that award. And from whatever capacity, whether it be observer or elsewhere, he continues to churn out high quality matches of dynamic styles. And this dude has the ability to be the best wrestler in the world. And I think he wanted, as you said before, do it on a level with guys that he has the freedom to do it with and be able to go back to New Japan Pro Wrestling and work with young talent and Rev Pro and continue in AEW and foster a relationship there. The other thing is going back to the WWE thing, for every AJ Styles being booked strongly out the gate, there is the examples of plenty of guys that will become just members of the card. And I think eventually Will Ospreay will definitely do that. I think eventually down the line when he's a little bit older, he's accomplished things, because eventually he's going to check that box. I think, money talks, and I think eventually WWE will want him there, and he's going to continue to grow his star with a multi-year deal. And I guess we'll have the same conversation in a few years, whatever the amount of time it is. Is he going to go to WWE? I'm happy he's staying here as a fan, because as you mentioned, the buffing out the edges, the ability to really take risks that he wouldn't be afforded there. And it's not just risk in the ring, it's risks of going, to different promotions, and the trust that Tony Khan exhibits with Jon Moxley. I think he'll be afforded with the same sort of credence here, that he's going to be able to go out and work dates that he wants and scratch the itch of the Josh Barnett stuff that Moxley has, whatever his equivalent to that is. And the thing with Will Ospreay going forward is establishing him as a main program. I think they were hesitant on doing that on AEW television before he was signed completely. We saw him featured in that program with Chris Jericho for All In, but he had yet to be really featured in a big way, like going for a championship belt or threatening MJF. It won't be long until we see that. And you got to capitalize while you have Will Ospreay in his prime. We know how quickly he can turn in the other direction. And he's a guy that, man, the options are out there as far as in-ring work. And I think it's the best spot for him. Almost too obvious that we started overthinking it and believing he was going elsewhere. Started working ourselves in a shoot that, of course, he's all elite. Like going back to Don Callis' painting, his face is already on there. We just got to wipe it off. It's already there. So this was always written in time. He was going to be there. Kudos to him. Congrats to Will Ospreay. I think this is a great thing for wrestling fans. And for those WWE fans that now are acting like you never wanted them, eat the crow, I guess, right?
Oh, yeah, you got to eat the crow. I think I love what this shows about Ospreay's mentality. He's still hungry. He's still wanting to rip it up. And let's be honest, you kind of alluded, Ace, that WWE will want him in the future. And I agree. WWE is a great place to go when you're ready to kind of throttle back on that bump card. I think it's a great place to end your career. But when you're in the heat of your prime and you're ready to like tap into your mid 30s and really want to tear it up with some top tier guys, I think AEW was the right choice for him with that mentality. And WWE, this was a big moment for AEW because WWE wanted him now. Reports came out, they were wanting him. There was wrestlers kind of doing interviews. Rollins has been kind of subtly pushing for Ospreay to come over, and we would all love the Ospreay Rollins stuff. It'd be a great match. But the fact that arguably the greatest wrestler on the planet right now, from an in-ring standpoint, he had his choice of where to go, and he chose AEW. That says a lot. That's a big win for AEW in the free agent market. That a guy like this would choose this company over the industry leader. That's a big feather in AEW's cap. And I'm excited, man. Ospreay in the scrum mentioned names like Miro, Andrade. Could you imagine Swerve and Ospreay, MJF, Ospreay? There's so many matchups that are exciting. So I'm jazzed on this.
So before we move on, I just want to make this final point. As remembered, you said that everyone has the dream of working WrestleMania, but I think as we're approaching history being developed with AEW, there are other stages equivalent to WrestleMania. It's no longer the be all end all as far as like I want to work in front of a capacity crowd. We saw it All In, but even Wrestle Kingdom is approaching those levels. Those are the things that are bucket list versions that I think wrestlers. You can't speak for everybody and what their aspirations are, but it isn't just really the Super Bowl of wrestling and the only Super Bowl of wrestling. It is, of course, still a very big stage that affords people, and everyone looks at it as, damn, it's the World Series, it's the Super Bowl, it's the NBA Finals. But there's other options out there where the stages are becoming increasingly more important. And as the history grows at AEW, their stages will continue to be equally as important, and they're going to be standing in the shadows of the other matches that happened prior as we approach the 10s, 11s, and 12s of the Double or Nothings and the Full Gears and the Revolutions.
It's just growing.
It's growing over time, so those stages are going to get larger. And like you said, the biggest one, he participated All In. He got the tattoo. That should have been the precursor on his arm with the attendance. He's going to be All Elite for the time being, and man, let's just enjoy the ride because this dude is a 5-star match factory, and he's going to be producing at a high rate here in AEW. And the options are out there. You mentioned Miro and Andrade, but we got the option of Bryan Danielson, like Ricky Starks. There's it's an endless list of guys that these go out there and just blow the roof off with ease, because this is just going to be plug and play. He already is familiar with the roster. Their audience is familiar with them for the build to All In. It makes the most sense, almost too much sense.
Yeah, and it's a good bait for wrestlers to stay with AEW. When you have a guy like Ospreay signing there, why, and you want to wrestle guys like that, why would you want to leave? So, and the whole like every kid's dream is WrestleMania. At one point, I would wholeheartedly agree with that, but today I think it's really overstated because we've spoken on the tavern when we were doing visits to the tavern and interviewing indie wrestlers. Well, I think we've spoke to over 50, 60 wrestlers, and when you interview these guys and say, what made you want to be a wrestler? What was your dream? What's your dream as a wrestler? Japanese wrestling is a big deal to a lot of up and comers where that's where they want to go. Their dream has always been to wrestle in Japan. We heard a lot more wrestlers wanting to, that was the end goal rather than main event WrestleMania. I think that's not so much just the landslide definitive dream for every young wrestler. I think times are changing.
Absolutely. And of course, WrestleMania stage still looms large, but as we continue to build history with AEW, as mentioned before, they're going to become more attractive. And there's going to be fans that grow up that watch these guys growing up, that this was their wrestling. Don't forget that. Like we have kids that are 10 years old now, 7, 8, 9 years from now, they're going to train to be a wrestler, and what is their staple core memories of wrestling fandom will be All Elite Wrestling. It's not just going to be WWE. So
I agree, man.
Speaking of WWE, let's get into big story number 3 and preview Survivor Series.
Big Story 3.
We have Survivor Series in Chicago, Illinois, and this is a historic event. We know how great it can be. The stipulations that used to be the 5-on-5 tag matches have seemingly been replaced with War Games traditional matches here at the top of the card. So we have 2 War Games matches to preview. But they take up a lion's share of the time on this card. So it is a shorter run, of course. We have 2 championship matches, one for the Women's World Championship, an Intercontinental Championship match as well. But I guess starting with the Intercontinental Championship match with Gunther and The Miz, story here, of course, Chad, is Gunther's the longest reigning IC champion of all time. He's defeated numerous challengers. I mean, go down the line: Sheamus, Drew McIntyre, Chad Gable. And this is to continue to cement his legacy as the greatest IC champion of all time. We saw him throwing shade at Ultimate Warrior in interviews and talking, and we'll talk about it in the quick hitters, about how he doesn't believe he can main event with that title at WrestleMania 40. So he has aspirations beyond this. And The Miz here, he won, this mini sort of number one contendership to get a shot at Gunther. To me, this has no steam. I'm also not a Miz fan. This is just another notch in Gunther's belt. And if Miz was the one to end it, I'd be equally as pissed. So Gunther rolls here, and I have trouble caring. I want to see Miz get, slapped around and stuff. But, as far as IC title matches, there's a lot of different options on this roster you could have used to establish, even in a losing effort. Miz doesn't need it, nor do I even desire to see it.
Yeah, it just seems like another notch on Gunther's belt. Miz, I'm not a big fan of him. I think his character work and his heel work is a bit it doesn't get the appreciation that it deserves. I do think he's been a road dog for the company. So hats off to Miz. He does what they tell him to do. He's a company guy, but his in-ring just leaves a lot to be desired for me. So to see Gunther just chop the ever-loving shit out of this dude, I'm going to enjoy it. And if he, in some way, even if it's a dastardly move and he sneaks out a win and steals that IC title, fans should revolt. Gunther continues to run until there is someone who you can pass the power to. Because at this point, whoever Gunther loses to should be a made man. That's a moment to make someone. So I hope they go that route and just continue to let him roll.
Yeah, and the thing with everyone talks about The Miz, and they go to that talking smack promo with Bryan Danielson. Look, I mean, a lot of passion in it, but I think a lot of people are holding that up into this light that is putting him in a stratosphere he doesn't belong in. I don't know. I don't believe he's as great as everyone says he is. And I think as time goes on, we saw the same thing happen with Sheamus. We saw the same thing happen. When you stay on the roster long enough, that fan base starts to be like, oh, this person's great. And they start to kind of look past the things that you didn't like about him and the shortcomings. Listen, he's been there for a while. He's doing something right. But in a lot of ways, to me, I mean, we saw how he's featured at WrestleMania last year and the year before that. The guy is usually just kind of taking hits. And I think his character has been damaged to the point where it doesn't resonate when you start to heat him up again. Of course, he's a former WWE champion, main event of WrestleMania, defeated John Cena. I get that. WrestleMania 27. But he also, he does a lot of jobbing out to guys like Bad Bunny and Shane McMahon and things like that. And Pat McAfee, like, the guy's always involved in comedy skits. It's taken a lot of steam from him. It is what it is. Again, this match, you could have had other options, especially with other people not featured on this card. You could have found a different option. Maybe even run back a Chad Gable match for Gunther. Like, just have something that would be a banger and memorable. This will not be that.
I thought that was the road they were on, was this feud with Chad Gable and heating up Chad Gable as a true singles guy. And I thought they would let him eventually get that win over Gunther. They went away from that and brought Miz in. And I'm with you. Like, even though Miz main evented a Mania, that seems so far in the future. And there's been so much stuff to etch away at that legacy that they could have built something more out of him. But the way he's been booked over the last decade has been so piss poor, like start, stop, comedy, hosting segments. Like, he holds no weight to me as a true bona fide threat, star, competitor. He's just kind of the guy that WWE can trust to plug into spaces to fill holes. So yeah, I'm not real big on this.
So the other interesting thing, we talked about that interview he did just with WrestlingNews.co. This is Gunther. And the question was, everyone's been asking, do you think the IC Championship can main event WrestleMania 40? His quote was, "That's not going to happen." So we also discussed how Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns obviously deserve that spot. But the other interesting quote, he said, "But I think there's a ranking system and everything for a reason. I think it's quite obvious that I outgrew the Intercontinental Championship already. I am ready to make that next step." So if this was any other opponent, Chad, I'd feel like there's a chance that he could lose the title because it looks like they're getting him geared up. To me, again, going back to, I know the visa issue remains large, that he can't leave and go out to different countries, especially with all these international dates they're doing. But I think you set him up when Cody wins the title at WrestleMania 40. He is the first challenger, or maybe the second, and have a long 6 to 7 month program with this guy. Maybe eventually having Gunther defeat him. Like, no one's saying that Cody has to have a year-long run. I know that's like in vogue now and everyone talks about it, but we could have a championship run from Cody that is great and meaningful. After 7-8 months, he loses to a guy like Gunther. Like, I'd probably sign off on that.
Yeah, it's tailor-made. The American Nightmare going up against the big, bad, scary foreigner. I mean, it's a tale as old as time in wrestling. And Gunther, they built him up to be such a threat. You would legit be wondering, can Cody overcome this obstacle? So I think it's a great first, second, third feud for Cody after Mania.
So while the rest of the Judgment Day is busy, Rhea Ripley is going to be defending her WWE Women's World Championship against Zoe Stark. And this is kind of plug and play what we've been talking about with the issue with the top of this women's division, is that Rhea is booked so strongly, and rightfully so. She's one of the hottest acts in all of WWE and all of wrestling. We saw, they just had the big event here in New York for all the autograph signings, and as all stars. Magnum TA's there, Trish Stratus, the Bella Twins. Who had the longest line? Rhea Ripley.
Of course.
She is absolutely just so hot right now as far as momentum goes. But it's hard to match her up with anybody. Zoe Stark is awesome, an up-and-comer. I think she's going to be a great addition to the roster.
She's great in ring, too.
Great in ring. It's going to be, it probably is going to even be a good match. But there's zero expectation that a title change can happen here, and that takes away from it. And I understand the Judgment Day story has been, all week, every week, it's about the War Games match and taking on Rollins and Zayn and Uso and Cody Rhodes, and it's all been about that. And, of course, Mommy has been involved in that as well. But Rhea Ripley, certainly as the Women's World Champion, especially going into WrestleMania season, we need to heat something up to have her have a meaningful program and live up to the match that she had the year prior where she won the title. So let's get to that spot.
Well, this match is a testament to how big of a star Rhea is. She's a big star. Her star power is such that she has star power in spite of her feuds. They do not book her in interesting matches, in interesting stories. We talk about this on the debate. If you guys watched yesterday or you're listening today, my whole theory is that the women's division, the question is AEW's women, is WWE's women booked better than AEW? And I think they're not booked as good as AEW. And that's not saying AEW books their women. I think both companies are suffering at booking their women. But with WWE, you have such a wealth of talent and embarrassment of riches. The expectations are higher for me. You should be booking them better. So with that, I chose AEW book them better because there's a lot of young stars, unproven stars in AEW where I'm not expecting as much out of them as I am WWE. You got to give me more matches, man. You've got to give me more storylines. Like I have an interesting little bit of I have some statistics. So this week of women's wrestling for the weekly wrestling shows in America, ROH had 14 minutes of women's in-ring action. AEW Collision had 11 minutes of women's wrestling. AEW had 10 minutes. NXT had 9 minutes. Rampage had 8 minutes. Impact had 8 minutes. And then WWE Raw had 7 minutes, and SmackDown had a big goose egg, 0 minutes of women's wrestling. So everyone likes to shit on AEW. They don't feature their women. They don't feature their women. This is an epidemic going across all promotions where they're not giving us, they might give us a match, but if the match doesn't have any compelling story behind it, it hurts the overall division over time. Rhea is a star in spite of the feuds and storylines she's in. She's became a star in a men's faction in a men's storyline is where she became the star, the union with Dominic and all of that. But, Zoe, like you said, Ace, plug and play. It's just another body to throw in with Rhea. Do we think Zoe has a shot in hell of winning this match? No. Because you haven't built any story to let us think there's a shot. So that's something they really need to adjust and look at.
So she was involved in that four-way at Crown Jewel. So the story, could be linked there. And then she won a battle royal, which is an easy trope to get people into it. But this is an opportunity for Zoe Stark in a big way, in a losing effort. We saw her involved in Trish Stratus and Becky Lynch's feud earlier in the year. So this is a big opportunity for her to really impress the right people to continue to stay at that spot in the card. I think she will. But moving into the women's War Games match, Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, Shotzi, and Becky Lynch versus Damage Control, which is the team of Asuka, Bayley, Kairi Sane, and Io Sky. So we saw Damage Control adding to their ranks, and we saw Asuka, of course, join them. And maybe this is a double swerve, maybe looking too into it. Maybe Asuka turns face during this. But as of right now, Damage Control is in a really good spot to dominate SmackDown for the time being. Bianca Belair, Flair, and Shotzi agreed to meet the group in a War Games match to defend what is going on the SmackDown side of things. You have the union of sort of all these great former champions, all these great faces in the division, and now the person that is filling in as that fifth and final competitor is Becky Lynch, which is, she was a late addition. And of course, Becky Lynch hasn't been featured as heavily as she was, the momentum that she had about 5 years ago at this point. But she still holds a lot of reverence. If you look at the match star power on paper, they're throwing everything they have at this. I'm curious where they go, especially with Damage Control. There is the option. I heard some theories that possibly Asuka and Kairi Sane will go off forming the Kabuki Warriors inside this match to turn on Damage Control. I don't see it happening here. I think this has an opportunity to be a fun match. Doesn't have as much steam on it as the men's War Games match, but it certainly has a little bit of a heat. Like if you let this prosper for the next 6 months, it probably would have enough to get to a War Games match with like historically what it takes to get to War Games. This is just there. It feels like what we talk about week after week, this like need to have an equal part in the men's and women's match. Men's and women's Royal Rumble, men's and women's, War Games matches. That's kind of been what they do. And maybe this wouldn't have accounted for it. Maybe this should have just been 5-on-5 tag. Why not?
Yeah, it
doesn't justify it. Let me just say that. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't call for it.
It doesn't call for it. It doesn't feel like it should be a War Games match. They're just filling that void, keeping the equality going. If we do it with the men, we got to do it with the women. How about just put the story first? It should be all about if the story calls for it. I hope Damage Control wins with that amount of big names on the other side with Becky, Bianca, Charlotte. I mean, Shotzi's kind of the odd man out in the star power there. I like Shotzi, but it is what it is. Asuka, Bayley, Io, Kairi, good crew. I'm a big Bayley fan. I hope Damage Control wins. I think there's more meat on the bone to do something here. I'm just not confident of what this means for the overall division of the women. I feel like you're throwing a bunch of women on the card to feature that, but there's no real true story. Hopefully story comes out of it. We'll see.
So we have Carlito versus Santos Escobar. Not much here, except that Santos Escobar fully turned heel against Rey Mysterio. Carlito defending the right of LWO. Don't have much on this match. We also have the rumored match that's potentially not announced yet. Maybe it'll be announced on Friday. LA Knight versus Solo Sikoa. That is not announced yet, but it seems like they're trending in that direction. But our main event is inevitably going to be this War Games match. Excuse me. The Judgment Day, Finn Balor, Damian Priest, Dominic Mysterio, and JD McDonough versus Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, and Cody Rhodes. This match, I have to say, justifies a War Games match. It's been going on for a very long time, Chad.
Yeah, this is what they've told this story for so long. I mean, how many iterations of these guys can we get on SmackDown and Raw? Like they've been beating that drum where the War Games match feels justified. Like, okay, this is the blow off. Let's get this out of the way and go our separate ways and branch off. It's going to be interesting. They've been kind of teasing dissension with Damian Priest. It feels to me like they're leaning into maybe turning that guy babyface. Cody, this is kind of a stopping point before we really start ramping up the push to Mania in the new year. Rollins doing his thing. You got Jay in there with the bloodline tie. Jay and Sammy have that history. This is the premier match on the card. I mean, and it's honestly, I'm a little exhausted by it just because we've been seeing all of these guys mixing it up for so long. So I'm honestly kind of down on this Survivor Series. I wish Survivor Series would step up and claim that big four spot that we want it to. But this is the bright spot of the card.
So the question going into this is, are they going to add a fifth member to each side? So I think the obvious side for Judgment Day would be to add Drew McIntyre. For the faces, unsure. They could just roll 4-on-4. They didn't make it clear it's going to be 5-on-5, but that's traditional war game. So we will see if, where they go with it. Also, shout out to Adam Pearce for his announcement for this match, trying to stay in the spirit of William Regal, but in his own way. It was nice.
Yeah. He brought the fire. Yeah, I'm wondering. I thought it was going to be 5-on-5 with Drew, and then maybe Randy Orton comes out. There's still the looming thing. Is Punk going to show up? I think Punk's just trolling everyone, but
right.
Yeah, I'll be watching. It's Survivor Series. It's Thanksgiving. There's tradition there. I'll have my eyes on it. I wish I was a little more up for it, though.
Well, with that being said, let's get to the quick hitters and talk about all the other stuff in wrestling. Quick hitters. All right, for quick hitters, we got some clarification about this Continental Classic, got some competitors announced, but we also had AEW announcing the creation of a new championship. So it was revealed during Saturday's Full Gear pay-per-view that the winner of the Continental Classic will become the first ever AEW Continental Champion. So we also saw Eddie Kingston putting his ROH World Championship and New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong Openweight Championship on the line in each of his tournament matches, meaning the Continental Classic winner will hold 3 titles and be the first ever AEW Triple Crown champion. So Kingston did say that his intention to put his titles on the line in a promo at Full Gear, and then Tony Khan confirmed that in the social media post, and then they figured out that they're going to be announcing these other guys. So we got Bryan Danielson showing up like the Wounded Warrior, like he just got back from a Civil War battle with the face wrap. So it's him in this tournament, Andrade El Idolo, Eddie Kingston, and Mark Briscoe. So we definitely have to have, I think it's 8 others. Yeah, so 8 others out of 12. And the other interesting thing was outside interference has been banned from the tournament, and no one will be allowed to accompany the competitors to ringside. And Tony Khan made that clear during the scrum that this will be heavily enforced, and they're going to respect the rules of the tournament.
Yeah, it's going to be all about solid in-ring action, getting a legit finish. A winner will be declared. A loser will be declared. No shenanigans. The Triple Crown thing is very interesting. It's fresh. It's a little convoluted where I'm like, so is the AEW Continental Championship, is that a new title? The way Tony made it seem in the scrum is that you will essentially be you will be a champion in 3 promotions by winning this. You'll represent New Japan, you'll represent ROH, and you'll represent this new AEW Continental Championship is the way I'm taking it.
Exactly. He compared it to the All Japan's Triple Crown title that exists at the same time. He says he's not creating a new championship, but consolidating 3, which has me okay with it.
Yeah. I think it's fresh. I think it's different. And I think it adds weight to this tournament that some of the tournaments, he's very tournament happy. They do a lot of tournaments, but this tournament feels different. It feels bigger. It feels more important. And the field right now of Danielson, Andrade, Kingston, and Mark Briscoe, I'm digging it. I love that they're throwing Briscoe in there, throwing him a bone. I think it's good for Mark to be in that spot. I'm excited to see the other 8.
So he also gave clarification on the scoring that we were referencing last week. He said the system will be 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and compared it to European football. Of course, he has, big tie-ins with that. I like the sporting feel to it. I have to say, I think it's going to be really, really good, similar to the G1 tournament in Japan yearly.
Yeah, we'll be covering this a lot on Wrestling Tonight. We'll have a running tally, and we'll keep you guys up to date on the points.
Other notes from the scrum, he said Ronda Rousey said she's not signed, but thought based on the Wrestling Revolver show, it would be great to have a match and build some interest for Ring of Honor. So he said he would love to have her back. He also talked about, there was 13,000 people in the building, a full gear attendance record. We had a reporter asking about Mercedes Moné. Khan said that he's had great conversations with her and looks forward to working with her in the future if she wants to. Talk about Will Ospreay, as you said. He talked about Ospreay since getting permission from New Japan. He thought it'd be great if he could keep Ospreay in the New Japan Pro Wrestling AEW sphere, saying he got the deal done this week. He did not give a firm date on AEW Revolution, but he said that the Sting deserves a platform to honor his legacy, and then finish it off with the scrum on Tony Khan's part that Bryan Danielson's injury was not as serious as they thought, and at one point he thought that Danielson would be out longer. We all did, looking at the injury, a broken orbital bone, and here he is in a few days for the tournament kicking off on Wednesday. So it's going to be wild to watch this unfold.
Yeah, and it goes to show you guys how much news happened this week, because Ace just kind of blew over. Ronda Rousey had a match on ROH TV. Like, how wild is it? She did the Revolver show with Marina Shafir. Tony kind of is like, you guys should continue this feud with Athena, the ROH Women's Champion. Come over on Ring of Honor. Handshake deal. Ronda's like, yeah, that sounds fun. Who knows where this goes? I think the door's open. Marina Shafir's under contract with AEW. Who knows what the future holds? But it was such a wild scene to see Ronda Rousey in an ROH ring coming out to bad reputation. Very, very just kind of a WTF moment.
100%. And we also had CM Punk trolling AEW and WWE storyline. So you referenced this before. So he's been posting stuff on his Instagram stories. Not that I know, I can't see them. I'm blocked by CM Punk. But he shared an update on Tuesday afternoon, revealing he had burned 666 calories. And then he also attached the song War Pigs by Faith No More, obviously referencing War Games, which was the 2023 Survivor Series theme song and is. On Tuesday, he posted a 4-slide story reel. 2 of his slides, in particular, Cats in the Eye wrestling fans. The first was an old horror comics panel with a hero battling a devilish figure, with the final slide featuring a WWE promo video of Punk in his wrestling gear with devil horns and a red complexion, making himself look like Satan. We had Fightful reporting with Sean Rob Sapp saying that the people under the mask are the ones planned for the eventual reveal. Several in AEW know the identities, but the secret is being kept quiet. Sapp also said that no one believes it is CM Punk, and it would be a huge work on those who know if that would be to turn out to be the case. So the WWE and the AEW stuff continues out there, and just because he didn't show up at Full Gear doesn't kind of squash those flames, Chad, because they didn't reveal anything with the devil. It's possible that they're waiting for the long form of it.
Yeah, I think this is Punk being Punk. We talked about on the flagship. This is what he does to gauge interest from companies and try and get a contract. He puts stuff out there that the fans gravitate towards, hoping that the fan swell it gets so big that companies are like, man, fans are really wanting this. Let's offer him a contract. But I don't think there's anything beyond that. I would be shocked if he shows up at Survivor Series at this point. I think it's all just playing the game.
So Dave Meltzer reported that Dolph Ziggler is expected to sign with AEW, as many expect him to land there. Of course, he has friends in the company, but his brother also works there. So he has a non-compete with WWE that does not expire till late December. People are thinking he might have been the signing here. Obviously, that he's limited with the non-compete, but Dolph Ziggler, a good landing spot for him. I think I would like to see him in New Japan Pro Wrestling, maybe working in both spheres.
Yeah, keep an eye out. His contract ends towards the end of December, and World's End is December 30th. So that might be a big moment, a new pay-per-view. You want a big splash, have Dolph Ziggler come out.
So WWE is continuing its international run here. So next year's Backlash event will be the first ever PLE to be held in France. So WWE announced on Thursday, the show will be titled WWE Backlash France and will take place from the LDLC Arena in Lion de Scenes on Saturday, May 4th, 2024. Arena holds about 16,000 people, 12,000 for sporting events, depending on how it's set up. So a report from Fightful last month noted Backlash would likely take place in France. However, at the time, it was believed Paris would be the host city. So this news follows, obviously, them hosting the Bash in Berlin in Germany. So they're continuing to make, and we have Perth, Australia hosting Elimination Chamber. So they are definitely stretching out, and clear that the roadmap for Endeavor/TKO is to expand internationally.
Global domination.
Speaking of global, the Globe Theater was referenced to be closing, but it will not be closing after all. We had everyone giving on a eulogy post for this great arena. So a day after Prestige Wrestling said they had been told that the venue would be closing immediately, the promotion posted a notice they had been informed that the theater will remain open for the foreseeable future. So as you know, Globe Theater has been the home of the PWG events since 2018, has hosted a WOW taping, numerous other events, and a variety of wrestling companies, including a joint New Japan Pro Wrestling Impact event. So happy to see this great wrestling venue not going by the wayside.
Yeah, iconic venue. Love the look of their shows with PWG. Good to see it's not going anywhere.
So Kota Ibushi officially signed with AEW. So Tony Khan announced this. Kind of fell, as you mentioned, a lot of news this week, but he is officially all elite after all of it. I mean, worst kept secret. We know he'd be coming here eventually.
I thought he was
line.
signed already.
Exactly. So this is a signing that probably hit a little different, probably 2 years ago, but happy to see he's here and, kind of can introduce his body of work to audience that hasn't seen him yet.
Yeah, another piece and a great roster.
Flip Gordon signed with CMLL, so he's made his decision. So in a post on Instagram, Flip Gordon announced that he has signed with the company. He's been teasing it. He had a table with AEW, WWE hats in front of him. So CMLL is his landing spot, and he's going to be, featured in some big spots here. I think he's facing Valder Jr., Teton, and Star Jr. at the November 17th event earlier this week. And he was featured in all different spots here, but now he's being locked down. Of course, most people know Flip Gordon from the original All In. People remember him from BTE fame and also ROH. So Flip Gordon has made, a lot of the headlines in a negative way for, some, I believe he's a flat earther. So people give him heat for that or whatever. So happy to see he's getting some work in CMLL.
Yeah, CMLL, big pull for them.
NWA has begged Effie to work with them. So Effie went in on Billy Corgan. I'll let you take the lead on this. You pulled this piece of news, but Billy Corgan got some heat from Effie.
Yeah, Effie was talking about NWA. Just basically he's quoted as saying, "You know what I told Billy Corgan? I said, go fuck yourself. They asked me to come work in NWA. They begged. They had multiple people call me. And he said, I'm not helping you. They said, Tyrus isn't here anymore. You know what I said? You leaned into what Tyrus was doing with hate speech and Fox News, etc., for such a long period that it fucked you. And now you want Effie to come in and fix things and do a PR job? No." So Effie's had some long heat with Corgan and with the fallout of the CW deal, if it ever was in place to begin with. There's a lot of questions. I saw a report that Billy Corgan was going to be cutting the roster. So
then he denied it. And then, I saw the same thing, that he denied it, that it was happening, and called it all sort of fabricated news. Who knows,
there's smoke, there's fire. So NWA is an interesting situation right now to watch.
So we have the introduction of Andre El Idolo to the GCW audience, and he'll make his debut in December in one of 3 confirmed dates with the company. So this is continuing to be, the story that AEW works collaboratively, let their talent do things that are exciting. So he'll be there Saturday, December 9th at the Los Angeles Ukrainian Cultural Center for the Highest in the Room 2. His opponent's not announced. So they also followed it up in Chicago for an unnamed event on Friday, January 12th, and then on Friday, January 26th in Tampa. So we got 3 Andrade matches here with GCW. So really awesome to see. I can't wait to see what he does, who they match him up with. There's a lot of options for GCW, and I think that audience is going to eat up what he does in a great way.
Yeah, Andrade and GCW, sign me up. That's fun.
We have the departure of English language commentator from New Japan Pro Wrestling, Kevin Kelly. So he has to leave New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's been phased out anyway. So they announced on Monday that he will not call Wrestle Kingdom 18, nor will he call New Year Dash in January. Originally planned to be his swan song as the English play-by-play voice of the company due to family commitment. So he's supposed to get this grand goodbye, but it seems like he's leaving with more of a whimper. But I think he's found a home with AEW, so I think this is a good spot for him to be.
Yeah, Collision. He's going to be in Collision.
And finally, here in our quick hitters, Chris Hero has made his return to pro wrestling at West Coast Pro. So at WCP's Whiplash event on Friday, Hero wrestled for the first time in over 3 years, wrestling Timothy Thatcher in the main event. He won the match via submission with a Fujiwara armbar. So after the match, Hero's fiance Rachel Ellerin came to the ring, 2 hugged. And Hero said after defeating Thatcher, he felt like it was a great way to end the story. He can't think of a better way to end his story than West Coast Pro. He then proceeded to take off his wrestling boots. Then he said he was kidding, as he said he wanted everyone to see the West Coast labeling on his boots. He then said as a matchmaker, he's going to make a match. He called out Kevin Blackwood, calling him an asshole. He challenged Blackwood and Titus Alexander to a tag team match at WCP's next event on December 3rd. And his tag team partner will be none other than Kenta. So we know he's been behind the scenes in the pro wrestling scene since being released by WWE in 2020 due to like the pandemic budget cuts. But here he is back in action. And listen, man, if Chris Hero wants to be in a major promotion, they'll have him. He has a mind for the business, and it's awesome to see him back in the ring because he's one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah, it's good to see him back for sure.
So that's the quick hitters here. And we have some, we might go over 2 hours here. We apologize for that, but we wanted to give you guys a little bit of a Thanksgiving flavor. Chad had prepared some research. Instead of Dave Meltzer, we're going to give you some Turkey Day wrestling.
Yeah, man. Wrestling and Thanksgiving kind of go hand in hand. And I think a lot of modern fans really look at that tradition being tied to Survivor Series, but it really started way before that. Survivor Series becoming a Thanksgiving tradition was really kind of a tactical move to go against Jim Crockett and all of those guys. But it all started, maybe it didn't start, but when you think about wrestling for old school fans and Thanksgiving, it really kind of goes back to the biggest night of Thanksgiving wrestling. That's Starrcade 83. I mean, this is an event that lives in infamy. It was headlined by Ric Flair against Harley Race in a cage, a no DQ match. This was the match that was kind of coming off of the heels of their feud where Harley Race put a $25,000 bounty on Flair's head and he feuded. There's the famous scene of him coming out on set with the baseball bat, chasing Bob Orton off the stage. Like, a lot to it. This was also the event that featured Roddy Piper and Greg Valentine in the dog collar match. So big time event. The show was nearly ruined. A far bigger story than Starrcade, and the first closed circuit event was Vince Jr., Vince Sr., and Jim Barnett, who was the director of operations at WWF at the time, all resigned from the NWA and its 1983 convention as a prelude to WWF going national. They were attempting to sign every big star, reap the independence or the territories, I should say, for all their talent. And this was kind of the early stage of Vince's takeover. And it all the whole Thanksgiving tradition came out of that. Survivor Series was created as a counter program for Starrcade to try and take eyes off of it. So there's a long history here with Thanksgiving and wrestling.
Yeah, we were discussing this on Shot Nostalgia about just Survivor Series at large as they're building towards it and trying to establish tradition. And I think some of the people that haven't lived through Survivor Series being on Thanksgiving Eve or on Thanksgiving itself feel like wrestling on Thanksgiving it feels weird unless it's SmackDown when it was on Thursdays. It was one of those things that felt like it I don't know who's going to attend it, who's going to watch it. Maybe it's a ratings thing that TV networks don't want to get behind it. But really, if you look at it through a lens of, I compared it to the NFL and I compared it to the Knicks who play on Christmas. If at this point, say you started Survivor Series in 1987, 1988, and at this point it is almost 40 years old, you'd have 40 years of tradition that it became people's instilled legacy of this is what we do on Thanksgiving. Wrestling fans watch this. Football fans watch the Lions and the Cowboys every year. I think it's a missed opportunity, but a lot of the stuff that we saw on Thanksgiving, I mean, in the 80s, like I think the peak of tradition is 83 to 87, the early Starrcades in Greensboro, and then they had the Omni in Atlanta and AWA at the St. Paul Civic Center, Mid-South Wrestling at the Superdome. People were cashing in on Thanksgiving as a family day that after you're done eating the turkey, you go out to the wrestling match and you watch these guys wrestle with the payoff of the feuds. And I mean, if you go back, and I see you put in the notes here, the earliest record of a major Thanksgiving event for wrestling was November 26, 1959, when Barnett promoted a show at the Indianapolis State Fairgrounds Coliseum headlined by Roy and Ray Shire, a.k.a. Ray Stevens, defending the NWA World Tag Team Championship against Dick the Bruiser and Yukon Eric with a sellout of 13,000 fans.
Crazy.
I mean, dude, and the other part too, the Minnesota area, St. Paul, They had a Thanksgiving tradition from 1960 to 1987 until the AWA could no longer draw decently. And the only exception was in 1972 when the promotion ran Saturday night of the Thanksgiving weekend. It has me wondering, dude, like, what would they do? Like, you think it could have weight here if I think it could, right?
Yeah, it's a tradition, dude. Like, I feel like WWE kind of took that tradition, but they've even dropped the ball with Survivor Series, kind of feeling lesser than in recent years. And one of my favorite stories, because if you really look at the Thanksgiving tradition and the Vince taking on Southern Territory Wrestling and that whole, there's so much intrigue. I mean, you could make a movie out of this, like legit. And there's a story that I just have to tell because it's so good. So when Vince is trying to take over and pretty much screw over Starrcade 83, he has a secret meeting with Harley Race, who is the NWA champion. He's in the main event of Starrcade 83 taking on Flair. He has a secret meeting with Race right before Thanksgiving, and he offers him a big guarantee to bring what many fans at the time believed to be the legitimate world title in NWA, bring that title to WWF, where he would most likely drop it in a unification match against Hulk Hogan. And McMahon wanted Hogan to be the flag bearer. So Race claimed he told McMahon while in a bathroom where the secret discussion was taking place to look in the mirror. McMahon didn't understand where he was going, but Harley Race said that every day when he wakes up, the first thing he has to do is look in the mirror. And if he signed that deal, he'd have no respect for the reflection for the rest of his life. And one version of the story Race used to tell says that McMahon was so furious as they were walking out of the bathroom with the deal dead, McMahon charged and tried to tackle Harley Race, who quickly reversed and subdued him. Whether true or not, the story minus the physical aspect was identical to the story Howard Cosell, the legendary sportscaster, told when he was approached by McMahon to be his lead announcer at the same time, and Cosell gave it a no consideration and turned down McMahon, noting McMahon snapped and laid into him verbally like he couldn't believe. This is the behind the scenes tactics that McMahon uses and used that people like to say, oh, WWE is so professional. They would never do something like that. I always say WWE is like, all of their tactics are clandestine, man. They're cloak and dagger. They do all their shit in the shadows, and they put this kind of projection of what they are out in public as this stand-up company. But this is the pro wrestling business, dude. Vince was a dog, rightfully so. It's a dog-eat-dog world, and he played that game in the early 80s, man. He was doing things like this. So it just goes to show you it's a far cry from TKO and Endeavor and these nice Wall Street trading on Wall Street. Like, this was born in the belly of the territories where backroom deals and secret meetings and backstabbing was going on. It's absolutely fascinating, but don't forget that Vince, he's a shark, man. It all came from these type of meetings, these type of dealings, and it's all centered around Thanksgiving. All of this stuff, the Black Saturday that happened and him showing up on Georgia Championship Wrestling, all of that kind of was forming and birthing out of this rivalry, this Thanksgiving rivalry of Starrcade versus Survivor Series, when he introduced Survivor Series to pretty much bury Jim Crockett and those guys. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, and I guess the mentality for wrestling promoters at that time was just the family-oriented type of stuff where we saw an increase in ticket sales for movies. And like we mentioned, the football piece, there's a aspect of families are home together, so they're looking to do things. And I think we've moved away from that. We're wrestling. And I think a lot of the promotions that were successful with it, of course, they did it over and over again because it was drawing. And then once it stopped drawing, they got scared, and it's not worth running a show with all the talent and all the overhead that goes into it. But the interesting part too is people forget how entrenched Thanksgiving was to wrestling, especially in the Southern territories. We mentioned Greensboro Coliseum. Thanksgiving night was the first time they had a show there, November 23rd, 1961. And every night on Thanksgiving, there was a show there until 1987.
Yeah.
So unlike Minneapolis, where Thanksgiving was not really anything bigger than a usual show, in Greensboro, this is a big cultural Thanksgiving event akin to, like you mentioned, what eventually became, things like WrestleMania. This was a thing you marked on your calendar. Like, you knew you were going to see something very important, very significant on Thanksgiving, and people looked forward to it, even to the point 1984, a newspaper in the local paper in Greensboro said, quote, "In Greensboro, Thanksgiving has become synonymous with the spectacle of big men hurling each other about in a small ring in front of thousands. Wrestling has become a part of Thanksgiving in the city for more than a quarter of the century." So they moved away from it. And like, it's kind of crazy. Like Thanksgiving, like the beginning was, everyone thinks back to like 93 with the picture of Lex Luger, and like also the funny story of Lex Luger. I think the Extra Cooler Boys were telling this on their show about Lex Luger trying to film that segment with his family, and he's sweating in front of the fire. And we think about that for Thanksgiving, but it's really it's so laced in history here and immersed outside of the WWE walls. And they took it and ran with it. They tried to capitalize it because they thought it would be financially smart of them to have this tradition, but it wasn't based in the same spirit it was with Crockett or with AWA. This was an institution for Greensboro. People forget that.
Absolutely, man. I mean, we think gobbledygooker and things like that, the WWF really hit on in the early 90s. And it just goes to show you, we had a debate question this has been a while ago, but the question was, is Vince McMahon a creative genius? And obviously you go to, yes, that's your gut reaction. And I really thought about it. And my take was, he's not a creative genius. He's a business genius. A lot of his ideas are rehashed ideas from the territory days. And Thanksgiving featuring Survivor Series is a testament to that. He looked at what the territories were doing successfully. He took it and he put his business acumen behind it and made it big and visible to many more people. But that wasn't a creative genius moment where he came up with this out of the blue. He was looking at what his contemporaries were doing around him, and he took it and put more of a presentation, around it. I think that's a lot of Vince, people, and that's why I like being on this show. That's why I like Shot of Nostalgia with you guys on Fridays on our YouTube channel, is really shining a light on something that WWE has desperately tried to bury in wrestling history, and that is the influence of the territory days. It cannot go wrestling tropes. All of that started long before Titan Sports and Stanford really got their paws on it in the mid to late 80s. Like, there was a lot of this stuff that Vince was taking from other guys and just putting a new, fresh spin on it. But wrestling and Thanksgiving was synonymous long before Survivor Series.
And in a lot of ways, too, if you look at it, and of course they'll never admit this, but Survivor Series was created to stop Crockett from being successful. And you can even trace Survivor Series creation to being the fact that at the time, pay-per-views were rare. You can only run on one channel. So when you wanted to have Starrcade, you couldn't have it on pay-per-view on the same night with WWF. And WWF coming off the success of WrestleMania, it was overwhelming avalanche that, people look back at Crockett taking Starrcade from Greensboro, killing the tradition, but it wasn't that. It was really in response to Vince using these tactics of saying, what works for my competition? Well, I'm going to cut them out at the knees. And, we see that right here. I mean, as time goes on, like you just watch through the history of, like, you can't blame them. Like, obviously it worked, but you watch just like these traditions go by the wayside and die because someone was trying to make money and put people out of business. And I'm glad we're moving away from the mindset of wrestling promotions, the PTSD from the Monday Night Wars and all the other stuff where it's about killing the other promotions in the other territories. We're living in a wrestling world now, hopefully outside of WWE. And I think WWE in a lot of ways works collaboratively with people in their own right, not maybe talent, but everyone, there's enough food at the table for everybody to eat, to use a Thanksgiving example of that. There is a very big piece of wrestling that rising tide lifts all ships. And that wasn't the mindset back in the day. It was murder your competition, put them out. And, you wonder what could have been if these legacies and these companies would have survived in a smaller capacity, and we would have a form of Jim Crockett elsewhere instead of living on a tab on a app like on Peacock. It just feels like you said, something's missing because it's being told through the eyes of someone who beat them and put them out of submission with no respect for what the history was. It just becomes property of WWE. And I think it's the job of the fans, especially the fans that have lived through and those that want to relive the history and watch it, to go out there and kind of experience it for their own right. Like, go back and watch some of these Starcades. Watch that first ever one in 1983, where, you see all these great matches and see these talent that before it gets whitewashed by WWE on their end with Flair and Race in a cage. Like, go and check that out. I think it's well worth your time. It's well worth the effort. And, make that your tradition. Watch the early Starcades and bring it back into rotation. And maybe it's someday we'll will AEW to do it on Thursdays and bring it back. Put it on pay-per-view on Thursday. I'll buy it. Let's do it.
Absolutely. I mean, go check out Chi-Town Heat from 87. That's when they tried to take Starcade out of Greensboro to prove that it's not just popular in the Carolinas. They take it to Chicago. That was kind of Crockett trying to combat Survivor Series and make it seem bigger than just a regional show. And just to wrap up what you beautifully put about, variety and letting things thrive and not trying to sink every company. I am definitely thankful, and many wrestling fans should be thankful, that there's so much alternatives out there to just the industry leader. There's so much wrestling out there to consume. It's a beautiful time to be thankful for pro wrestling and what it is today.
Absolutely. I'm definitely filled with gratitude for what we have now. The landscape has changed so dramatically in the last 5 years, and hopefully in the next 5 years, it gets even better. But let's get to the week ahead.
The week ahead.
All right, here we are for the week ahead. Thank you guys for sticking with us. I know we went over 2 hours, but it's a feast. We got to get it.
Yeah, we got to get it all in.
This dessert, this whole thing. I mean, we're all stuffed here. But on Raw tonight, War Games advantage match: Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, or Sami Zayn versus Finn Balor, Damian Priest, Dominic Mysterio, or JD McDonough. In the history of War Games, has there ever been a time that the faces won the advantage, Chad? I don't think so, right? It's always been the heels with the advantage. How could you structure the match without the heels?
Exactly. You got to have them have the advantage.
We have a promo by Drew McIntyre, Becky Lynch versus Xia Li, Nia Jax versus Raquel Rodriguez, and Shinsuke Nakamura versus Chad Gable, which, if they give it some time, could have an opportunity to actually be a great match.
Oh, yeah. I'm all about Xia Li, man. I think they should push Xia Li with Becky Lynch. I like Xia Li. Give her some more.
On NXT, we have the Iron Survivor Challenge qualifying matches. So we have Carmelo Hayes versus Josh Briggs. We also have Blair Davenport versus Thea Hale. We have the NXT Women's Championship being defended by Lyra Valkyria against Xia Li. We have NXT Heritage Cup being defended from Noam Dar against Chad Gable. Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo versus Idris Anaf and Malik Blade. Eddie Thorpe and Charlie Dempsey, all on Tuesday, USA, as CW gets primed up for their NXT product.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they roll into this CW deal. We got a little under a year of it left on USA, so let's see how they wrap up this final run.
So as of record time, AEW Dynamite has no matches announced, but we've heard that the Continental Classic is going to be starting, so just keep an eye out for that. Same thing with Collision. We're going to get the Fallout for Full Gear. Usually they regroup. They don't really announce matches until probably the night before. Tuesday, usually we see some drops for that. But on SmackDown for this week, we have the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship being defended to Judgment Day. Finn Balor and Damian Priest defending against the Street Profits, Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins. Any chance that the Street Profits walk away with these titles and take them off of Judgment Day going into War Games? No chance, right?
No, I can't see it. I feel like there's a bigger story being told with Judgment Day, and you need those titles involved right now.
And the only other thing announced for SmackDown is the Grayson Waller effect, which is going to have guest Kevin Owens. We saw Kevin Owens as a guest commentator filling in for Corey Graves on SmackDown last week, or on Raw, I believe it was. I think it was SmackDown. And he had a little bit to say to Grayson Waller. I think he poured a drink on his head. So they're gearing up for a feud here. And why not? Grayson Waller, good young talent. Kevin Owens, established veteran on the roster. So seems like a good fit.
Yeah, give him the rub. I hate how they use Kevin Owens, but it's good for Grayson for sure.
So that's all we got, guys, as we approach Thanksgiving and we're approaching what is really the end of 2023. This has been a blast to talk about. We appreciate you guys, listening and supporting us. And, going back to the theme of this week, it's being thankful. And we're thankful that you guys take the time out of your day or, any day to listen to us, watch us, consume us, support us, because we wouldn't be able to do this without your support. So we do this for the passion of pro wrestling. And at this point, we've been giving out consistent content on a weekly basis over and over again. And we do it for the love of what we do, but we also do it for you guys. Like, we love the interaction with the consistent guys here, whether it be TNT Tyson or Don the Bomb Smith or Paul Ellering, or, I don't want to leave anybody out. Austin for sure.
Yeah.
The frequent flyers here of the tavern. We want to make sure we reference them. We are thankful for you guys, and we really appreciate the support because we're moving towards something bigger and better. And it is all in the love and passion of pro wrestling.
Yeah, I couldn't reiterate that enough. You guys that tune in every week and listen, I mean, that's what we do it for, to build a wrestling community of people that love wrestling, get to talk about this passion, this crazy passion that we all give our time to. And if you guys give your time to us and listen in any regard to any of our shows, if you're a regular for Brace for Impact or Raw Down or Fig Night or Shot of Nostalgia or us here Wrestling Tonight, the flagship, the debate, if you tune into anything, just know all the guys at the tavern, we really appreciate it and look forward to heading into the Christmas season, wrapping it up and moving into 2024, which I think is kind of primed up to be a hell of a year. Another great year of pro wrestling.
And we have some time for some shilling here since we went over that 2-hour mark. Make sure you guys check out all the great shows here in the tavern. Brace for Impact on Thursday, 10 p.m. It's going to be a special Thanksgiving episode, so we're not going to be covering the Impact weekly TV. I'm not even sure what they're putting on their TV, but we're going to be covering the first ever Turkey Bowl of TNA. Loser has to wear the turkey suit. We watch AJ Styles don that suit for the first time. Of course, we'll give you guys the Impact news. We're taping in advance, so we're going to try to collect as much news as possible for you guys to give you guys the latest on TNA/Impact. Also, Shot Nostalgia. Make sure you guys check out Saturday night's main event. We are approaching the end of the season. We are in the 90s. We are literally approaching. There's going to be an episode down the line where it's going to be half 92, half 2006, where they make the jump because they kind of kill the franchise of Saturday night's main event for a long period of time. And it takes a little bit to get going again. And we might see the emergence of it down the line again with these 4 special NBC one-off episodes with the new deal that's been negotiated. Really awesome stuff. And finally, I want to thank everyone that came out to Remarkable Wrestling Dream Sequence. It was a great show this past weekend. We'll be back in Port Jefferson for Back to the Hotel, December 9th, 2023. It's going to be a great night, and it's going to be, just appreciate the support of supporting independent wrestling because it is the lifeblood of what we do here. And, also I am thankful for Remarkable Wrestling always giving me the opportunity to be a part of their show and give me the platform to, do what I love, and that's being a part of pro wrestling.
That's awesome. Yeah. And guys, tune into Shot of Nostalgia. It's about to go on hiatus. This is the last fresh season. We'll be putting out the audio version of our WCW season that Ace and Mike crushed from 1996 WCW. That'll keep your kind of appetite wet during the little hiatus. But I got to tell you, we're not going to bury the lead now. If all the rumors I'm hearing are true about the return of Shot of Nostalgia at some point in the late spring, early summer of 2024, it's going to be a hell of a return season. So
it's been announced already. It's been announced.
Okay. You guys going to NXT takeovers, right?
Yes, we are. We announced it on the show. We don't have any logos or stuff like that, but it is going to be, we have some time, obviously, but we are going to be consuming every takeover in the black and gold era and then past it. So every takeover we're going to watch. And I mean, Colton's gonna be a part of the journey. Mike Belcaster, same tune. And for 30 weeks, you guys will get the WCW 1996 episodes, but we're going to regroup, revamp, and make sure we're ready for this season of NXT, which I'm looking forward to. It's going to be a different twist because it's definitely it's in my recent memory. It's stuff that I watched as an adult. It's not like stuff I'm going back to watch either for the first time or something I watched as a kid.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think we all look fondly at the takeovers. We love the takeovers. So that'll be fun. And speaking of, getting our plugs in, go back. We released the debate. So go check the debate out. We have one of our favorite guests on, Matt from Extra Cooler, who we mentioned earlier in the show. Have some fun, real hot topics. A lot of different takes being thrown around. Always have a good time with Matt. And the flagship every Thursday, me and Steve will be breaking down Full Gear. We'll be breaking down the Dynamite, talking about all of that good stuff. And if you're a movie fan, we don't plug this a whole lot because it's not in the world of pro wrestling, but if you're a fan of Hawk from Call the Hawk on the flagship with me and Sneed, we do a movie podcast called Broken VCR. It's on its own channel, Apple and Spotify. It drops every Tuesday. We've been knocking out some bonus episodes that drop on Fridays too. So if you guys are movie nerds or just want some movie recommendations, come check us out at the Broken VCR. Give us some love over there. We'd appreciate it. But yeah, that's really all I have, Ace.
Yeah, so I just want to give you guys a shout out for Broken VCR. I went back and watched listened to the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles episode you guys said. I think it was an early one, number 3, I believe it was. Fantastic listen. A lot of great Easter eggs for a great movie. John Candy, Steve Martin. One of the only and probably the quintessential Thanksgiving movie out there. Like, I don't think there's another one. I mean, that horror movie just dropped this weekend, so I guess you want to put that in canon. But as far as Thanksgiving movies go that are family friendly and things you can watch every year, that's the movie. And I love the way you guys covered it, the conversation. It was absolutely epic. And you guys go much deeper than just like the IMDb trivia stuff. You guys are assessing the movie, looking at it from a lens of the way, film majors would. And like the idea of like, I was able to pick up a lot of things from listening to you guys, of going back and watching the movie, seeing things through the eyes of someone that sees movies differently. As a casual movie consumer, it's awesome to see. And I recommend it very, very highly for people. If you want to take a little break from pro wrestling and move over to movies and cinema, check out Broken VCR. It's well worth your time.
I appreciate that, man. We pride ourselves on it. But yeah, guys, tune in, theturnbuckletavern.com, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. If you subscribe there, you'll find all of the stuff we have to offer. Almost every day of the week, we got something dropping. But until the next week, till next Monday, I should say. Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Enjoy it. Have a good turkey day. And next time when we wine and dine with you kings and queens, stay out of the alley and away from the pork and beans. God luck and good speed.
Reach for the sky, boy.